The first light of dawn does not arrive suddenly in the medieval countryside. It comes as a slow, pale bloom at the edge of the sky, softening the horizon where the land meets the heavens. The village still sleeps beneath a blanket of fog, the thatch roofs glistening with dew. Somewhere a rooster stirs, and a dog gives a single bark, answered by silence. Then, faintly, the world begins to move. Inside a low, timber-framed hut, a man wakes before the sun. His name could be any, John, Wolf, or Pierre, for the peasant is every man, and his life repeats across centuries and kingdoms. He rises from a straw-stuffed mattress shared with his wife and 2 children, the faint warmth of their bodies lingering in the chill. The smoke from last night's fire still hangs in the air, sharp with the scent of ash and damp wood. He coughs once, rubs his eyes, and listens to the sounds of the morning, the crackle of embers being stirred, the sigh of the wind pushing through the wattle walls, the faint groan of the oxen in the pen outside. The hut is small, 1 room, maybe 2, with an earthen floor and a roof low enough that he must stoop. There is little furniture, a rough-hewn table, a few stools, a chest, and the bed of straw. The family's world is contained within these walls, their labor, their love, their hope. His wife rises soon after, pulling her shawl tight, her breath misting in the cold. She kneels by the hearth and coaxes the fire back to life, blowing gently until a tongue of flame flickers among the ashes. The faint orange light glows on her face as she adds a few twigs, then a log. The smell of burning oak fills the air, mingling with the odor of wool, sweat, and earth. Outside, the first birds begin to sing. A lark, a blackbird, a dozen tiny voices hidden among the hedgerows. Their music marks the beginning of another day, indistinguishable from the one before, yet precious because it is survival. The man pulls on his coarse woolen tunic, patched and faded, and fastens a leather belt around his waist. His hands are thick and scarred, the fingers cracked from cold and soil. He wraps rough cloth around his feet before slipping them into wooden clogs. His wife ladles out a thin gruel made from oats and water, maybe flavored with a pinch of salt if they are fortunate. They eat in silence, the children still half asleep, their hair tousled, their eyes heavy. When the first streaks of sunlight touch the fields, the village awakens fully. Smoke rises from every chimney. Doors creak open. Chickens cluck and scratch the ground, their feathers catching the light. The smell of the morning wood smoke, manure, and damp straw drifts through the air. It is not unpleasant to those who live here. It is simply life. The peasant steps outside, stretching his back, his breath a faint white cloud. Before him lies the world he knows, fields of brown earth bordered by hedges, the faint path leading toward the Lord's manor in the distance, and beyond that, the forest. The forest is both friend and fear, a place of wood and game, but also of wolves and spirits whispered about in the long nights. The church bell tolls once, slow and heavy, calling the faithful to morning prayer. Its sound rolls across the valley, deep and solemn, reminding every soul of its place in the great chain of being. The man crosses himself and murmurs a brief prayer. His faith is simple, woven into the rhythm of his days. He does not ponder theology. He prays for sun, for health, for a harvest that will not fail. He prays that the Lord will not demand too much, that no plague will visit their village, that the oxen will remain strong. He prays because it is what one does before beginning the work that defines existence. The children are sent to fetch water from the well, their small wooden buckets clattering together as they run. The wife scatters feed for the hens and collects the few eggs they have laid. A cat slips between her legs, lean and silent, its fur dusted with ash. Inside the cottage, the fire burns brighter now, and she lays a small loaf of bread near the embers to warm it. It is coarse, dark bread baked days ago, made from barley and rye ground at the Lord's mill. Every loaf is taxed. Even bread belongs in part to someone else. The peasant shoulders his wooden howl, a simple tool worn smooth by years of use. He heads toward the fields, his boots squelching in the soft earth of the path. The mist is lifting, curling upward like smoke. Round him, the landscape emerges. Patches of green and brown, narrow strips of land worked by different families. Each plot tells a story of labor, debt, and endurance. The boundaries are marked by stones or small ditches, yet the land feels shared, as though all who toil upon it breathe the same breath, bend under the same sun. He meets other men along the way. They nod in greeting, saying little. Words are not needed when the work is endless. One carries a wooden plow. Another drives a pair of oxen, whose hides are slick with dew. A young boy trots behind, urging them forward with a stick. The sound of harness bells mixes with the cawing of crows overhead. From the distant churchyard comes the faint clang of metal, the smith already at his forge, shaping iron for tools and nails. As the sun climbs higher, the golden light spills across the land, catching the sheen of the river and the smoke rising from the village. The fields glisten with dew, and for a moment, even poverty has beauty. The man kneels, scoops a handful of earth, and crumbles it between his fingers. It smells rich, alive. He judges its moisture, its texture. The earth is his life, cruel in drought, generous in its time, never truly his, yet more intimate than his own flesh. By mid-morning, the world is awake. Women wash clothes at the stream, beating them against smooth stones, their voices rising in song. The sound drifts across the meadow, mingling with the buzzing of insects and the creak of wooden wheels. A cart passes by, carrying hay, drawn by a pair of oxen whose slow pace matches the rhythm of the day. The driver hums a tune to keep himself company, a melody older than memory. Back in the field, the peasant works. He bends, digs, lifts, and sweats. The sun grows warm upon his neck. His back aches, his hands bleed, yet he moves with steady endurance. Each motion is part of an unbroken pattern learned since childhood. The rhythm of labor is a kind of prayer, a conversation with the land. The soil answers not with words but with promise, of growth, of harvest, of bread. At home, his wife tends to the small garden behind the cottage, where cabbages, leeks, and beans struggle in the thin soil. She kneels beside the rows, pulling weeds, her skirt damp from the grass. Nearby, the children chase a stray goose, laughing as it flaps its wings in protest. Their laughter is bright, unthinking, free of fear, for now. The mother glances toward them, a faint smile softening her tired face. The morning wears on. The shadows shorten. The village hums with life, the ringing of the smith hammer, the bark of dogs, the lowing of cattle, the murmur of voices. Life is hard, but it moves with the grace of familiarity. Every man knows his duty, every woman her task, every child his place. The church stands at the center, its stone walls gleaming in the sunlight, the cross upon its roof pointing toward heaven like a reminder that even in toil there is faith. As the bell tolls again for mid-morning prayers, the peasant straightens his back and wipes his brow. He gazes across the field. The furrows stretch out before him, dark and damp, ready to yield. He knows that the same field fed his father and will feed his son. The thought gives him a quiet sense of belonging. He is small in the order of things, but he is part of the great design, the earth, the seasons, the hand that sows and the hand that reaps. A soft breeze stirs, carrying with it the scent of clover and smoke. The man breathes deeply, closes his eyes for a moment, and listens to the hum of bees, the distant chatter of voices, the eternal heartbeat of the land. When he opens his eyes again, the sun has climbed higher, bright and merciless. He grips his hoe and returns to his work, the sound of iron striking soil echoing like a heartbeat. The day has truly begun. The sun has risen high enough now to burn away the last threads of morning mist. The fields are bright with gold and brown, and the dampness of dawn has given way to warmth. Sweat beads on the peasant's brow, trickling down his temples. His shirt clings to his back, heavy with labor and dust. Every swing of his hoe feels rhythmic, not a thought, but a motion learned in the marrow, passed down from generations who did the same under the same sun. The rhythm of work is the heartbeat of his life, A pause would feel like silence too deep to bear. Round him, the others labor in quiet companionship, men and women spaced across the fields, bending and straightening in unison like stalks of grain swayed by an invisible wind. There is no talk of freedom here, no notion of time apart from the turning of seasons and the tolling of the church bell. To live is to work is to eat. At the far end of the field, his wife approaches with a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Her figure wavers in the heat like a mirage, the hem of her dress brushing the dusty grass. She carries the midday meal, a simple one, but it is enough. The man straightens, leaning on his hoe, and watches her draw near. The faint smile that touches his cracked lips is one of quiet gratitude. Though no words pass between them, they find shade beneath a low-branched oak at the field's edge. The tree is old, its roots gnarled like the hands that rest upon them. Beneath its leaves, the world feels cooler, softer. His wife lays out the meal, a piece of coarse bread, hard at the crust, a slice of salted cheese, and a small jug of ale that smells faintly sour but sweet to the tongue. The bread was baked 2 days ago, from grain ground at the Lord's mill, grain that was theirs in labor, but not in ownership. A portion of every sack belongs to the manor, another to the church, leaving little enough for those who tilled the soil. The man breaks the bread, dividing it evenly between his wife and the 2 children who have followed her. The younger one sits in the grass, plucking at dandelions, her hair tangled by the wind. The older boy takes the jug and drinks, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. They eat slowly, each bite a ritual. There is no waste. Crumbs are brushed into palms, not onto the earth. The taste of the bread is rough and dry, made from barley and rye, the poor man's grain. Wheat belongs to those who live behind stone walls, to those who dine with knives and silver cups. The peasant's bread is thick, gray, sometimes mixed with ground beans or peas to make it stretch through the hungry months. Yet even so, it is sacred. Bread is life, the body of their world. When the loaf is baked, a small cross is scored into its top, a prayer against hunger and misfortune. They eat in near silence, listening to the buzz of insects and the creak of the wooden cart passing on the far path. From a distance comes the faint bleating of sheep, the bark of a dog, and the ringing of the smith's hammer from the village. Every sound is a reminder that the world continues its ceaseless motion, a harmony of work, of toil, of survival. The man takes a slow sip from the jug. The ale is weak, brewed from barley malt, and left to ferment just long enough to dull the thirst. Water from the stream is unsafe, fouled by animals, and waste ale, even weak, is cleaner. It warms his chest as it goes down, a small mercy in a day that offers few. His wife chews slowly, her eyes half closed, her hands resting in her lap. Her fingers are roughened from washing, kneading, mending. When they have finished, she gathers the cloth, shaking the crumbs into the grass. Nothing is wasted. Even the crumbs feed the earth, or the birds that wait patiently in the hedgerows. The man leans back against the tree trunk, gazing at the patch of blue sky between the leaves. He lets his eyes close for a brief moment. The sound of the world softens, bees humming, the rustle of wind in wheat, the murmur of his children's voices. This brief rest is the day's only luxury. It lasts perhaps a half hour, no more, before duty calls again. The fields cannot be left untended. The earth waits for no man's comfort. Already others are stirring, standing, stretching their aching limbs. The man sighs, pushes himself to his feet, and brushes the dust from his tunic. The moment of peace is gone, swallowed again by the endless rhythm of work. He lifts his hoe and returns to the field. The sun beats harder now, high and relentless. His back bends once more. His hands grip the handle until his knuckles whiten. Each stroke turns the soil, bringing the smell of the earth to the air, a scent both sweet and heavy, like life itself. His wife gathers the children and begins her own labors nearby, pulling weeds, gathering herbs, checking the garden rows that feed them through winter. The village exists within a fragile balance. Food is not merely sustenance, It is survival measured grain by grain. A single bad harvest can starve him. Too much rain and the grain rots in the field. Too little and the soil cracks open like old skin. The peasant's life depends on what the sky decides. So they pray to the saints, to God, to the Virgin, and sometimes to the old spirits their ancestors once named before the priests came. It is all the same plea. Let the earth be kind. As the hours stretch on, the man's muscles tremble from effort. He pauses to drink from a leather flask tied to his belt, the liquid inside barely cool. He looks across the field to the manor house rising on its hill, white walls gleaming in the sun. There lies the Lord, distant and seen, yet always present. The land belongs to him, as do the people who till it. Each furrow turned is a tithe to his wealth, each drop of sweat a silent payment. The man feels no anger, only the dull ache of inevitability. This is the world as it has always been, and perhaps as it will always be. Near the edge of the field, a flock of crows lands, pecking at the newly turned soil. The man waves them off half-heartedly, but they return moments later, bold and patient. Crows are clever. They know hunger as well as he does. He wonders briefly whether they, too, pray to something when the harvest fails. The sun drifts westward, turning gold toward amber. Shadows grow longer, softer. The man stops once more, leaning on his hoe, and looks toward the village. Thin columns of smoke rise again from the chimneys, women preparing the evening meal, fires crackling in hearths. The smell of burning wood carries on the wind, mingled with the faint scent of baked bread. His stomach growls, though he knows what awaits him. Another loaf, another bowl of pottage, perhaps a scrap of salted meat if fortune is kind. He remembers the words of the priest from Sunday's sermon. Man shall eat bread by the sweat of his brow. He smiles faintly at the thought. The priest speaks of sin and virtue, but the peasant understands better than any that sweat is not punishment. It is life. Bread and labor are the same thing. One cannot exist without the other. The man wipes his brow, lifts his hoe again, and works until the sun touches the trees. The earth glows in the fading light, rich and dark, each furrow a promise of harvest yet to come. When at last he straightens, his body stiff, he feels the weight of the day settle upon him like a cloak of stone. But in that heaviness there is also peace, the kind that comes from having done what must be done. He walks home slowly, the path dusty beneath his feet. The fields fade into shadow, air cooling. His wife and children walk beside him, silent, tired, bound together by the same rhythm of hunger and hope. The village ahead flickers with the light of hearths, the smoke curling upward into the darkening sky. Soon he will sit again by the fire, break another piece of bread, and taste once more the ashes of the day. Evening settles over the village like a cloak of ash and gold. The sun, low in the west, casts long shadows that stretch across the furrows, turning the fields into a patchwork of light and darkness. The peasants, weary from their labor, move slowly along the narrow paths that wind between hedges and ditches. The air hums with the sound of insects and the distant murmur of running water. Every breath tastes faintly of dust and smoke, the perfume of toil. At the center of the village stands the church, small, made of gray stone, its roof of wooden shingles weathered by rain and wind. The bell tower rises above it like a sentinel, its single bronze tongue waiting for the hour. When it rings, the sound rolls across the valley, deep and heavy, marking not just the passage of time but the rhythm of every life within earshot. The man hears it now, the slow toll of vespers calling all souls to prayer. The sound seems to sink into his bones, both comfort and command. He glances toward his wife, who nods wordlessly. Their children, tired and dusty, walk beside them, one holding a bundle of wild flowers gathered along the path. The younger one hums softly, a tune she half remembers from her mother's lullabies. They reach the church as the last light fades. The doorway is low, the threshold worn smooth by generations of bare feet. Inside, the air is cool and thick with the scent of incense and damp stone. A few candles flicker upon the altar, their flames small but steady. The priest, an old man with a face lined like a plowed field, stands before the crucifix, his voice low and steady as he recites the evening prayers in Latin, words most do not understand, but which they feel deep in their hearts nonetheless. The villagers kneel upon the earthen floor. The man removes his cap and bows his head. Round him voices murmur the familiar phrases, their sound weaving together like threads in a tapestry. His knees ache, but he does not move. In this place, even pain feels sacred, part of the offering. The image of Christ upon the cross watches over them all, carved in wood, the expression solemn and weary, a man who knows suffering intimately, as they do. For a brief moment, the man allows himself to drift inward. He does not think of the fields or the taxes or the hunger that never truly leaves. He thinks of the mystery that holds the world together, the invisible hand that moves the seasons, that gives rain or withholds it. He does not need to name it. It is simply there, vast and unknowable, like the sky above the harvest. The priest's voice rises. He speaks of obedience, of humility, of patience. He speaks of paradise waiting for those who endure. The words fall like soft rain upon weary hearts. For the peasants, heaven is not a concept of theology. It is a promise that somewhere beyond the suffering of this life lies rest, abundance, and peace. The thought warms him, even as the night grows cold outside. When the prayers end, the villagers cross themselves and stand. The man lingers a moment, gazing at the candlelight flickering upon the stone walls. He notices a small carving near the door, a crude figure worn by time. It might be a saint or perhaps something older, a remnant of the days before the church's shadow reached this far. No one speaks of those days anymore, yet traces remain, charms hidden in thatch, herbs tied in bundles, whispers in the dark. The priest would call them superstition. The peasants call them caution. Outside, twilight deepens. The air is cool and sweet, carrying the scent of cut grass and damp earth. Fireflies begin to flicker among the hedges. The villagers drift back toward their homes, murmuring quiet farewells. The man and his family follow the worn path, their feet knowing every turn even in the half-light. Behind them, the church bell tolls once more, a final note that fades into the stillness. At home, the hearth glows faintly, the fire coaxed back to life. His wife sets a pot upon the embers, stirring a thin stew of lentils and cabbage. The children sit close, their faces golden in the flickering light. The man removes his boots and sits beside them, stretching his legs with a groan of relief. The warmth seeps into his bones. Outside, the night hums with the sound of crickets and distant owls. They eat in silence, the crackle of the fire their only music. The stew tastes of salt and smoke, humble but comforting. The man dips a piece of bread into the broth, softening it, savoring each bite as if it were a feast. His wife watches the flames, her thoughts far away. The children whisper to each other, their voices low, as if afraid to disturb the peace of the evening. When the bowls are empty, the wife rinses them with water from the jar. The fire burns lower, casting long shadows upon the walls. The man leans back, feeling the day's fatigue press down upon him like a weight. His eyes drift to the window, a small square cut into the wall, covered with oiled cloth to keep the wind at bay. Through it, he can see a sliver of sky where the first stars have begun to appear. In the stillness, he feels the presence of the world around him, the sleeping animals, the rustle of wind in the thatch, the slow breathing of his children as they curl up on their straw bed. The sound of the night is alive, filled with subtle motion. The creak of wood, the chirp of insects, the distant bark of a fox. It is the voice of the land itself, whispering the same song it has sung for centuries. His wife finishes her tasks and sits beside him. For a while, they say nothing. Words are unnecessary. Silence itself is a kind of communion. Then, softly, she begins to hum a hymn, the melody simple and haunting. It is an old tune, one she learned from her mother who learned it from hers, a song older than the church walls, older perhaps than the Latin prayers they repeat each week. The man listens, eyes half closed. The song speaks of fields and rivers, of birth and death, of the eternal turning of the seasons. It speaks of sorrow, but also of endurance. In its quiet way, it is a prayer, not to the god of the altar, but to the earth itself. When she finishes, the silence returns, deeper now, filled with warmth. The man reaches out and takes her hand. Her palm is rough, her fingers calloused, yet the touch is tender. They sit like that for a long while, saying nothing, watching the fire sink into embers. Outside, the church bell tolls one final time, the bell of Compline, the call to rest. The sound drifts across the village, soft as breath, fading into the dark. The man lies down upon the straw bed beside his wife and children. The air smells of smoke and wool, of life lived close to the earth. He closes his eyes, and for a moment he feels the pulse of the land beneath him, the same pulse that beats in his veins, in the hearts of the cattle, in the roots of the wheat. It is all one rhythm, one endless prayer. Tomorrow it will begin again, as it always has. The fire crackles once, then sighs into stillness. The night holds the world in its gentle, unbroken silence. Night in the medieval village is not the still, gentle thing imagined by those who live surrounded by light. It is a presence, deep, immense, alive. When the last glow of the fire fades and the last voice falls silent, the dark becomes something that breathes. The huts huddle together beneath the stars, their thatched roofs outlined faintly against the sky. Beyond the narrow pops and fences lies the open field, and beyond that, the forest, the sea of shadows that moves with every gust of wind. The peasant stirs in his sleep. The straw beneath him rustles softly, the air thick with the scent of smoke, wool, and earth. The night is cold, the kind of cold that creeps slowly into the bones. He pulls the coarse blanket closer around his shoulders, feeling his wife's warmth beside him. The children curled near their feet. The faint glow from the hearth barely touches the corners of the room. Outside, the wind moans softly against the wooden door, as if something ancient were whispering to be let in. For a long time, he lies half awake, listening. The sounds of night are never still, the hoot of an owl, the distant bark of a dog, the low murmur of cattle in their pen. Somewhere far off, a wolf howls, its voice long and mournful, answered faintly by another. The sound prickles the skin, stirring an old unease. The forest is close, and though the villagers keep their fires burning bright, they all know that darkness has its hunger. The man closes his eyes and mutters a short prayer, not to ward off beasts, but to steady the heart. His faith is built on habit, on the small comfort of ritual, in a world that cannot be controlled. God keep the house, he whispers, and the field, and the souls that sleep within. His wife stirs beside him, half asleep. Did you hear it? She murmurs. He nods, though he knows she cannot see. Only the wolves, he says softly. They keep to the forest. She hums faintly, uncertain, then drifts back into slumber. The man listens a while longer. The wind sighs through the thatch, and for a moment, the sound almost resembles a voice, a woman's voice, faint and low, singing something without words. He tells himself it is the wind, yet part of him, buried deep, remembers the tales his mother once told by the hearth of spirits that wander the fields, of women in white who guard the wells, of ghosts who come when the bell tolls too late at night. The church forbids stories. The priest calls them foolishness, relics of a pagan time. Yet they live still, whispered in corners, passed from tongue to tongue like embers kept alive through long winters. For in the dark, when even the priest sleeps, men remember that there are older powers than those that speak in Latin. The man breathes deeply, the smell of ash and earth filling his lungs. He thinks of the fields lying silent under the stars, the furrows like ribs, the soil still holding the day's warmth. He thinks of the seeds beneath the ground, sleeping now but waiting for spring. Life hides in the dark. He reminds himself. Death, too. At last, his thoughts fade, and he drifts into a heavy, dream-filled sleep. He dreams of the forest. In his dream, He walks among tall trees whose branches weave together like fingers. The air is cold and damp. Shapes move between the trunks, shadows that seem almost human, faces that shimmer and vanish. He hears the bell of the church in the distance, but its sound is muffled, as if underwater. He walks toward it, yet the forest stretches endlessly before him. Then he sees her, a figure in white, standing by the edge of the stream, her hair long and pale as frost. She lifts her hand, and though her lips do not move, he hears her voice inside his mind. The earth remembers. He wakes with a start. The fire has gone out, and the room is heavy with silence. A thin gray light seeps through the window. Dawn has not yet come. He sits up, heart pounding, unsure for a moment whether he still dreams. His wife stirs beside him, murmuring softly, and one of the children turns over in sleep. Everything is as it should be, and yet the words echo still. The earth remembers. He rises quietly, careful not to wake the others, and steps outside. The air bites at his skin. Above him, the stars are fading, a pale glow beginning to gather in the east. The village is silent but for the faint rustle of straw and the distant bleat of a sheep. He walks a few steps toward the field, the ground cold beneath his feet. The horizon is rimmed with silver now, the promise of another day. He kneels and presses his hand to the soil. It is cool and damp, a thin crust of frost clinging to the surface. He closes his eyes and feels the pulse beneath, not truly beating, but alive in its stillness. The earth remembers. He whispers again, though he does not know why. By the time the first rooster crows, he is back inside, feeding the fire with small sticks. His wife wakes soon after, rubbing her eyes, unaware of his dream or his dawn vigil. She sets about her tasks, and the children stretch and yawn, their small faces soft with sleep. The world begins again as it always does, bread, water, work. The dream fades like mist in the sun. As the morning brightens, he joins the other men heading toward the fields. Frost glitters on the grass, the breath of oxen rising in pale clouds. The sound of iron striking sore returns, steady and familiar, yet somewhere beneath the rhythm of his work, he feels a strange quiet stirring, not fear exactly, but remembrance, as if the land itself holds the memory of things long past. Later that day, the priest visits the fields, walking with measured steps, his cloak trailing behind him. He carries a small brass cross and sprinkles holy water on the soil, murmuring blessings for the coming season. The peasants bow their heads as he passes. The man does the same, though his thoughts wander. When the priest's shadow falls upon him, he feels the urge to ask about dreams, about the voices of the forest, but he says nothing. Some things are better left unspoken. The priest moves on, his voice low and solemn. The Lord sees all, he says. Keep your hearts clean and your hands steady. The devil walks where faith falters. The peasants murmur assent, crossing themselves. The man returns to his hoe, the words echoing in his mind. But when he looks toward the forest at the edge of the field, he feels no fear, only a deep, strange reverence. The trees stand silent, their bare branches black against the pale sky. They have seen generations come and go. Perhaps they remember, too, that night, as the fire burns low and the children sleep, the man sits awake again, staring into the embers. The coals glow red, then dim to gray. Outside, the wind stirs the eaves. He listens, half expecting to hear the voice again. That soft, wordless song that is not quite wind. It does not come, yet something within him feels changed, like a seed turning beneath the soil, waiting for its time. When sleep finally takes him, it is deep and dreamless. But beyond the village, in the forest where the moonlight touches the frozen stream, a figure in white seems to stand for a moment. Or perhaps it is only the mist. And then, once more, the darkness breathes. The next morning begins not with the rhythm of the fields, but with the murmur of the road. Market day comes only once each week, and it is the only day when the village breathes a different kind of air, brisk, full of voices, and the smell of travel. Even before dawn, the sound of wooden wheels and the lowing of cattle rises like a slow tide. The peasants, who live most days bound to their small strip of land, set out toward the market town, a few miles beyond the hills, their carts laden with what little they have to trade: eggs, cheese, onions, cloth, and sometimes a handful of grain spared from the Lord's due. The man wakes early, as always. The dream of the forest still lingers vaguely at the edge of his thoughts, but today there is no time to dwell on it. He and his wife gather what they have to sell: a basket of eggs, 2 small wheels of cheese wrapped in cloth, and a bundle of dried herbs she has grown and tied carefully with twine. It is not much, but it might bring enough coin to buy salt, a new knife blade, perhaps even a bit of wool to mend the children's clothes before winter sets in fully. The children are awake and chattering, excited by the thought of the town. For them, the market is a wonder-colored noise, people from other villages, even the faint whiff of the unknown. The man harnesses the ox to the cart, the wood creaking, leather straps groaning. The road ahead glimmers with frost in the early light. He lifts his wife into the cart, the children sitting at her side, and takes up the reins. With a click of his tongue, the ox lumbers forward, its slow gait steady as a heartbeat. The road winds through fields bare after harvest. Here and there, smoke curls from cottages, and other carts join the path, forming a slow-moving procession toward the town. Greetings pass between them, nods, short words, the exchange of news about weather, about sickness, about the Lord's men who have been seen riding the roads. A thin winter sun rises over the hills, turning the frost to silver. The ruts in the road are hard with ice, and the wheels jolt sharply, but no one complains. The journey itself is a kind of ceremony, repeated generation after generation. As they near the town, the road widens, and the smell changes, less of soil and dung, more of people. The sounds grow louder too, the bleating of sheep penned for sale, the shouts of traders, the clang of a blacksmith's hammer echoing from within stone walls. For a moment, the man feels as though he has entered another world. The town seems enormous after the quiet of the village, its timbered houses rising to stories high, banners fluttering from windows, the church steeple piercing the pale sky. They pass under the town gate, a wooden arch watched by 2 guards with spears. The guards glance at the peasants, but barely pay them mind. The tax has already been collected at the last toll bridge. There is nothing more to take from those who have little. Inside the walls, the streets are alive with color and noise. Merchants from far-off towns shout their wares: wool from the north, salt from the sea, spices that smell faintly of warmth and distance. A juggler performs in the square, his colored balls flashing in the air like sparks. Children gather to watch, laughing, their eyes wide. The man guides the cart to a corner near the well, where others from his village have already laid out their goods. His wife arranges the eggs and cheese neatly on a cloth, smoothing it with care. The air smells of bread, smoke, and animals. People move past in a steady flow, women with baskets, monks in dark robes, traders shouting prices, dogs weaving between legs. For the peasant, this is both thrilling and overwhelming. He is used to the still rhythm of field and church, not this whirl of strangers and coin. Yet he feels a small pride as he stands beside his goods, his hands resting on the edge of the cart. When a woman from another village stops to examine the cheese, his wife smiles shyly, offering a taste. A few copper coins change hands. The sound of them, the small metallic clink, is both sharp and sweet. By midday, the market is at its height. The square is a sea of motion. Bells ring from the church tower, marking the hour, and for a moment, all voices seem to blend into one great sound. The man steps back to watch, his children clutching his hands. He buys each of them a small treat, a twist of sweetened bread from a stall, its crust dusted with flour. Their faces light up with joy, and for a while, the hunger that usually clings to them like a shadow seems forgotten. He watches the merchants from afar lands, men with cloaks of fine cloth, their accents strange, their goods glittering with color. One sells glass beads that catch the light like drops of water. Another shows small knives and trinkets made of bronze. The peasant's wife looks long at a piece of blue cloth, smooth and bright as the summer sky. He counts their coins quietly, then nods. She smiles and touches the fabric reverently, as if it were silk from heaven. Later, they sit at the edge of the square to eat their simple meal. Bread, cheese, and a cup of ale shared between them. Around them, the noise continues, traders haggling, animals bleating, the laughter of children. Yet for a moment, it feels as though the world is wide and generous. The man leans back against the cart, watching the clouds drift across the pale sun. He thinks of his fields lying silent, of the forest waiting beyond the village, of the dream that still hums faintly in the back of his mind. As the day wears on, the market begins to thin. The merchants pack their goods, carts creak under new loads, and voices fade into the distance. The man and his wife gather their things, counting the small handful of coins they have earned. It is enough for salt, a spool of thread, a small knife, and a bit of dried fish for supper. Not riches, but a victory measured in necessity. They leave the town as the sun begins to sink. The road home glows with the orange of dusk. Behind them, the noise of the market fades, replaced once more by the quiet of the open fields. The children drowse in the cart, their heads resting against their mother's arm. The man walks beside the ox, one hand on its flank, the other steadying the wheel as it bumps along the ruts. The sky deepens to violet. The wind smells of smoke and frost. Ahead, the village lights flicker faintly, small fires gleaming through thatch. Home is waiting, the hearth, the straw bed, the soft breath of sleep. Yet as he walks, he glances once more toward the dark line of the forest, distant but ever near. The trees stand like silent watchers, their shapes black against the fading light. For a moment, he thinks he sees something move between them, a glimmer, a white shape that vanishes when he blinks. He says nothing. He only keeps walking. The road bends, and the forest disappears behind the hill. By the time they reach the village, night has fully fallen. The door creaks open, the fire is lit, and the day folds itself into memory. The coins are tucked away carefully in a small wooden box, the blue cloth placed beneath it like a secret treasure. The children sleep quickly, the ox snorts softly outside, and the wind hums against the walls. The man sits beside the fire, his hands still smelling faintly of earth and smoke. The dream, the forest, the voice, they return again as thoughts, not visions. He looks into the flames and sees only their red, slow dance. Outside, the bell from the distant church tolls once, faint but clear. Tomorrow will bring another day of work, another dawn, another field. But tonight, for a moment, the world feels larger, full of roads, markets, forests, and unseen things that breathe in the dark. The next dawn comes gray and slow, the kind of morning when even the birds seem reluctant to stir. Mist hangs low over the fields, softening the world into shadow and silence. The man wakes before the light has gathered, the ache of yesterday still heavy in his back. The brief wonder of the market is gone, folded back into the long fabric of toil. His wife sleeps lightly beside him, one arm across the youngest child. The coals in the hearth have died, leaving only the faint scent of ash. He rises quietly, careful not to wake them, and steps into the cold. The village lies hushed, the smoke of a few early fires curling upward. He walks toward the small wooden chapel, where the reeve will meet the men before the day's labor begins. The reeve is the Lord's man, chosen from among the villagers, but bound more to the manor than to those he grew beside. His word carries weight, not because of wisdom, but because behind him stands the unseen power of the Lord's hall and the men at arms who enforce it. Today is one of the days of service, the corvée. Every household owes a certain number of days each week to the Lord's fields, the demesne. On those days, their own small plots lie untouched, their own hunger deferred. The rhythm of peasant life is measured by such obligations, invisible yet unbreakable. When the reeve calls the names, the man answers simply, "Here." There is no protest, no choice. A man who refuses to work the Lord's land can lose his own. The rules are ancient, older than memory, older than the church's own stones. So he shoulders his spade and follows the others down the path toward the manor. The manor lands spread wide, larger, richer, better tended than the strips that belong to the peasants. The soil here is dark and fertile, and the crops grow tall under the same sun that burns the common man's back. The Lord's fields lie close to the manor house itself, a long hall of timber and wattle with a roof of red tile. A plume of smoke rises from its chimney, and the smell of roasting meat drifts faintly across the air. The peasants smell it too, but do not speak of it. The reeve shouts instructions. The men move in silence, spreading out across the field, taking up the rhythm of labor, the scrape of the hoe, the crunch of boots, the exhale of breath. The Lord's steward rides by on horseback, his cloak of heavy cloth sweeping behind him. He does not speak to the workers. His eyes pass over them as if they were part of the soul itself. The horse snorts, tossing its mane, and the steward turns back toward the hall. The man works steadily. Each stroke of the hoe seems to draw strength from the earth itself, though it takes more than it gives. The hours crawl, the mist lifts, and the sun climbs higher. His thoughts wander to his own small field, the one he cannot tend today, where weeds may already be creeping among the stubble. He thinks of his wife spinning wool, of his children feeding the hens, of time slipping away like sand through open fingers. Yet he keeps working. To stop is to invite punishment. At midday, they are given a short rest, a few minutes to drink from the stream that runs along the field's edge. The water is cold and clear, biting against the tongue. The men sit together in the shade of a hedge, eating coarse bread from their pouches. No one speaks much. A few curse under their breath softly, not for rebellion but for release. One man, older and bent, mutters something about the injustice of it, how they work, and the Lord reaps what they sow. Another shakes his head, warning him with a glance. The reeve is not far, and words have a way of growing into trouble. The older man falls silent, tearing his bread in half as if it were the Lord's heart. When the bell from the manor tower rings, they rise again. Work resumes. The afternoon stretches long, the light thick and golden, the air humming with the small sounds of labor. By the time the sun sinks low, the field has been cleared, the day's task done. The reeve walks among them, checking the rows, nodding curtly. Only when he gives the word do they shoulder their tools and begin the walk home. The man's arms are heavy. His feet drag in the ruts. Each step feels older than the last. Yet as he walks, he looks toward the west, where the sun bleeds into the horizon. And for a moment, the sky seems vast and ungoverned. Back in the village, the evening smoke rises from the hearths. The women are outside, drawing water from the well, their voices carrying through the cool air. Children chase each other between the cottages, their laughter sharp and fleeting. The man's wife sees him coming and waves, her face worried but warm. She has kept a small fire burning, and when he enters, the scent of stew greets him, thin but rich with herbs from the small garden behind the house. They eat in silence. The children talk quietly, telling of small adventures, of a lost goose and a found feather. The man listens, nods, and smiles faintly. Afterward, he mends a broken strap on the ox's harness while his wife spins by the fire. The rhythm of the spindle is soft, hypnotic, whir, pause, whir again. As the night deepens, the talk turns to the church's tithe. The collector will come soon to gather his due, a tenth of what little they own. It is the same every year. The priest speaks of heaven, of patience, of reward after death. The man believes, or tries to. Faith is a weight he carries as surely as the hoe and the plow. Yet sometimes, in the quiet between words, he wonders if God sees them at all, if heaven has room for those whose lives are spent in mud and sweat. He steps outside after supper. The stars are bright tonight, sharp and cold. The air smells of frost and distant smoke. In the dark, The world feels vast again, both beautiful and cruel. He looks toward the Manor's Hill, where a faint light glows from the Lord's Hall. Somewhere beyond that light, the forest stands dark, endless, whispering. He remembers the strange dream, the voice that spoke not in words but in feeling, a calling that seemed to rise from the earth itself. It comes to him again now, faint but persistent. The sound of the wind through the trees carries a rhythm that almost matches his heartbeat. He closes his eyes, just for a moment, and listens. The air hums softly. Then, from within the forest's black edge, there is a flicker, a movement like silver against shadow. When he opens his eyes fully, it is gone. He returns inside, shakes the chill from his shoulders, and lies beside his wife. Her breathing is steady. The fire burns well. Tomorrow he will work again, for the Lord, for the church, for the soil that never truly belongs to him. The weight of obligation presses down as constant as gravity. Yet even as he drifts towards sleep, the whisper remains quiet, insistent, like roots growing unseen beneath the ground. Something beyond the reach of the reeve, the steward, or even the priest. Something waiting. Morning arrives with a hush of pale light over the roofs of thatch, a faint fog coiling above the fields. The men have gone early, called by the reeve's voice, but within the cottages, another rhythm begins, quieter, slower, yet no less demanding. The women rise to the sound of the hearth being stirred, the soft crackle of twigs catching fire, the faint breath of a child still asleep. The day for them begins not with a bell or a summons, but with habit, endless and unseen. The man's wife moves carefully so as not to wake the children. She kneels by the fire pit and blows gently into the ashes. A thin thread of smoke curls upward, followed by a spark, then the faint orange glow that means the day has truly begun. She adds kindling, then a small log. The room fills with warmth and a faint smell of smoke that clings to everything, to cloth, to hair, to memory. She fetches water from the barrel outside, her bare feet brushing against cold earth. The sky is a pale gray, the mist lying low. The air smells of wet soil and wood. At the well she meets another woman, her neighbor, already drawing her bucket. They exchange few words, for words are often unnecessary. A nod, a brief smile, the shared understanding of what the day will demand. Back inside, the wife stirs the pot hanging above the fire, mixing what remains of yesterday's stew with a handful of barley. She sprinkles dried herbs, sage, perhaps, and a bit of thyme from the bundle hanging by the wall. The scent rises softly, filling the hut. The children wake, rubbing sleep from their eyes. One begins to hum a little tune, one of those songs the mothers teach their children, a melody older than anyone remembers. When the meal is eaten, she begins her true work. There is wool to card, flax to spin, bread to knead, and the floor to sweep. The baby must be fed. The eldest daughter, already nearing the age when she will take on the burdens of her own household, helps quietly, her small hands imitating every gesture of her mother's. Outside, the village hums with a different kind of life. The clucking of hens, the barking of dogs, the creak of doors. Smoke rises from every chimney, curling into the morning sky. The women move between houses, carrying baskets, trading a word, a tool, a small favor. They are the invisible threads that bind the place together, the keepers of rhythm, of warmth, of survival. At midday, the wife sits outside with the others spinning wool. The sound of the spindle is soft and steady, a whispering circle of sound. The fibers twist and pull, turn and wind, a motion that soothes as much as it labors. The women talk now, their voices low but full of life. They speak of the harvest, of sickness, of births, of dreams that come in the night. Some of those dreams are warnings, some are simply echoes of longing. They speak too of the priest's sermon from the past Sunday, his words about obedience, patience, sin. One woman laughs softly and says that patience is a thing men praise because they never have to practice it. Another hushes her, crossing herself quickly, glancing toward the church tower visible through the trees. They fall silent for a moment. Then the talk resumes, softer now. Children run nearby, chasing each other through the grass, their laughter a kind of freedom that none of the grown ones remember. A few women look up from their work to smile, though there is a touch of sadness in it. Childhood passes quickly here. It is a brief light before the long shadow of duty falls. In the afternoon, the wife goes to gather herbs in the forest's edge, mint, yarrow, chamomile, nettle. The forest is both friend and fear, a place of healing and of whispers. She knows where to step, which paths are safe, which shadows to avoid. The air beneath the trees is cool and still, the ground soft beneath her feet. The scent of damp leaves rises around her, rich and dark. She hums as she works, an old tune, older than the church's songs. Once her grandmother told her that the forest listens, that it has a heart and memory of its own. Sometimes, when she stands among the trees, she almost believes it. The light through the branches looks like moving water. The sound of the wind is like breathing. For a moment, she feels something pass through her, not fear, not comfort, something nameless and vast. Then the spell breaks, and she returns to her work. By the time she comes home, her basket is full. The sun is lowering, gold on the roofs, and the air is sweet with the smell of cooking fires. She hangs the herbs to dry from the rafters, then turns to the small loom in the corner of the room. The children are playing by the door, building castles of mud and sticks. She weaves until the light fades, her hands moving almost without thought, the shuttle's rhythm steady as breathing. When the men return from the fields, the sound of their steps fills the village again, boots on sore, tired voices, the call of a name through the dusk. The wife sets the bowls on the table, ladles the stew, and waits. Her husband enters, shoulders sagging, face lined with fatigue. Their eyes meet briefly, a quiet greeting, neither joy nor sorrow, simply recognition. We are still here. They eat in silence at first, then talk softly of small things. The ox that limped, the patch of weeds near the well, the rumor of a new tax whispered by the reeve. The wife listens, nodding. She feels the weight of all the unseen work she carries, the keeping of warmth, the mending of cloth, the healing of small wounds. It is not glory, nor even gratitude, that sustains her, but habit, the old inheritance of care passed from mother to daughter. Later that night, when the children are asleep, she steps outside. The stars are bright, cold pinpricks scattered across the sky. She breathes deeply, her shawl drawn close around her shoulders. From the forest comes the faint sound of an owl, low and haunting. The sound seems to pull at something deep within her, a memory, perhaps, of the songs her grandmother sang, songs of women who once knew other powers, before the priest's words named them sin. She closes her eyes, whispers something under her breath, a half-remembered blessing for the house, for the fields, for those who sleep inside. The wind stirs the trees, and for an instant, she feels again that vast presence, the hum beneath the earth. She opens her eyes and looks toward the dark edge of the forest. There is movement there, faint and white, like mist catching moonlight. She cannot tell if it is real or dream. It lingers only a heartbeat, then fades. She does not run. She only stands, watching the darkness breathe. Then she turns, goes back inside, and closes the door gently behind her. The fire still glows faintly. Her husband sleeps, his arm draped over the youngest child. She lies down beside them, her heart steady, her mind quiet. Tomorrow will come as it always does, with dawn, with work, with the endless weaving of duty and endurance. Yet somewhere in her chest, a small flame burns, the memory of something older than fear. Outside, the owl calls once more. The forest listens. The stars, silent witnesses, keep their watch. The morning comes gentle, pale gold spilling across the fields. In the small cottages, the children are first to stir. Their laughter breaks the hush of dawn before the men leave for the fields, and before the women light the fires. It is a thin sound, clear and bright, a sound that does not belong entirely to toil or hunger. It belongs to something untamed that still lives within them, the freedom that only youth allows in a world of burdens. The boy wakes first. His hair sticks out in every direction. his hands already dusty from where he has touched the earthen floor. His little sister sleeps beside him, curled beneath a rough wool blanket. He watches her for a moment before he rises. The door creaks open, letting in the chill air. He steps outside barefoot, his breath fogging in the cold. The world feels wide at this hour, still asleep but waiting. He can hear the crow calling from the fence post, the distant bark of a dog, the clatter of a pail at the well. He runs toward the byre where the geese are kept. It is his task to drive them to the meadow near the stream. They are unruly creatures, hissing and flapping as he waves his stick, but he knows their moods and how to make them obey. His laughter rings out as he chases the last straggler through the gate. Behind him, his sister has woken and follows, her hair tangled, her small feet quick. She carries a crust of bread, the morning's meal, and tears off a piece to share with him. The sun climbs, and the day opens slowly. The children lead the geese through the tall grass, past the hedgerow, and the narrow path that leads toward the forest. They know the boundaries of their world, where they may go and where they must not. Yet sometimes curiosity tugs them closer to the forbidden places, to the edge of shadow. The forest waits there, silent and green, breathing its deep, ancient breath. They have been told never to cross the line where sunlight ends. But still, the boy sometimes steps close, peering through the trees, feeling the strange stillness inside. In the meadow, they play while the birds graze. They build castles from mud, gather flowers for their mother, chase dragonflies that glimmer like bits of glass. The world is small yet endless to them. The stream becomes a river in their games, the hedgerow a wall of a fortress. They laugh, they fall, they rise again, their skin streaked with dirt, their knees scratched. Hunger and cold are familiar, but they do not yet understand them as curses. To them, life is motion, sound, discovery. As the morning turns to noon, they rest beneath a willow tree. The boy lies on his back, watching clouds drift, making shapes from them. A plow, a horse, a giant. His sister hums softly, tracing patterns in the dirt with a stick. From the distance, the church bell rings, and both fall silent for a moment. The sound carries across the fields, solemn, reminding them of the order of the world, God above, the Lord on the hill, their father in the field, their mother at the fire. Even children understand the weight of the bell, though they cannot yet name it. In the village, other children go about their small chores. Some gather kindling from the forest edge, some spin flax beside their mothers, their small fingers learning the motions that will soon become habit. One boy helps the blacksmith's apprentice, blowing the bellows while sparks leap like stars. A few watch the priest's garden, plucking weeds in exchange for bread. Their laughter rises and falls like birds in flight, brief, bright, quickly gone. When evening comes, the fields darken to bronze. The boy calls the geese, his voice carrying over the still air. They come slowly, waddling, complaining. He counts them as they pass through the gate, proud that none are lost. His sister gathers the last flowers, wild things with soft white petals, and tucks them into her hair. Together they walk home, hand in hand, the sky deepening above them. At the cottage, the fire glows. Their mother waits at the door, her hands flour-dusted, her face lit by the orange light. She takes the flowers from her daughter's hair and places them in a small clay cup on the table. The boy hands her a feather he found by the stream, gray fine, the kind that might belong to a bird of prey. She smiles, touches his cheek, then turns back to the pot where the evening meal simmers. The children eat hungrily, their eyes bright. They tell stories of what they saw, a frog that leapt into the stream, a shadow that moved beneath the trees. The man listens quietly, nodding, half smiling. But when the boy mentions the forest, the man's eyes darken a little. Do not go too close, he says softly. The boy nods, though curiosity still glows within him. After the meal, the mother brings out a small wooden figure carved long ago, a saint or an angel, its features worn smooth by touch. She sets it before the children and tells them a story. of how the first light came to the world, of how people once spoke to the earth as if it were alive. Her voice is low, full of rhythm, the kind that makes even fire seem to listen. The children lean close, their eyes reflecting the flames. When the story ends, the girl curls into her mother's lap. The boy lies beside the hearth, staring at the embers. The shapes within the fire seem to shift faces, trees, perhaps even wings. He cannot tell where dream begins. He feels warmth, safety, but also something deeper, a stirring in the dark beyond the door. It is as if the world is whispering secrets that only children can almost hear. Later, as sleep settles, the cottage grows quiet. The man snores softly, the fire fades, the stars emerge. The children sleep deeply, yet their dreams are full of fields that shimmer with strange light, of rivers that sing, of voices calling from the forest. The dreams are not frightening, only vast, full of questions that have no words. At dawn, the boy wakes again before anyone else. He steps outside. The air is damp, the grass cold beneath his feet. A thin fog drifts along the ground. He looks toward the forest, that dark border that both calls and warns. For a heartbeat, he sees something, a shape moving among the trees, tall, silent, glowing faintly in the dim light. It does not frighten him. It feels familiar, like a dream returning. He blinks, and it is gone. Only the rustle of leaves remains, and the call of a crow. The geese stir behind him, restless, ready for the day. He picks up his stick, his small hand steady. The sun lifts slowly over the hills, and the light catches in his eyes, clear, young, and endless as the morning. The church bell tolls across the village, slow and solemn. Its voice rolls through the air like a command from the sky itself. On Sundays, every soul in the parish must attend Mass, no exceptions, no excuses. Even the sick are carried to the doorway if they can bear it, for to miss the service is to risk more than earthly punishment. It is to risk the soul. The morning is still, mist lies low upon the fields, and the villagers walk in small groups toward the church on the hill. The men in rough tunics, the women with shawls drawn tight, the children clutching hands or corners of skirts. The air smells of damp earth and smoke, and beneath it all, something older, the scent of incense carried faintly from the open church door. The church itself is small but solid, its walls of stone cold to the touch. The bell tower rises above the thatched roofs like a finger pointing heavenward. Inside, the air is dim and heavy, the only light coming from narrow windows, and the candles flickering before the altar. The priest stands near the front, dressed in vestments of faded gold, his face lined by both age and authority. He speaks in Latin, a tongue few understand, yet everyone bows their heads when his voice rises. The man kneels among his neighbors, his cap in his hands. The priest's voice drones, the rhythm of prayer mingling with the faint coughs of children and the shuffling of feet. The wife bows her head deeply, her lips moving in silent repetition of the prayers she knows by heart. The children fidget beside her until she places a hand gently on their shoulders. The scent of beeswax and smoke fills the space, the sound of the bell at the altar marking the holy moment when heaven is said to draw near. To the villagers, the Mass is both comfort and weight. It is a reminder that the world is watched, judged, and measured. Every misdeed, every impure thought, every broken promise, all are recorded, not by the reeve or the Lord, but by God himself. The priest speaks of hellfire and salvation, of saints and sinners, of the devil's snares and the mercy of the Virgin. His voice grows thunderous when he warns of temptation, softer when he speaks of repentance. The man listens, his head bowed, his mind drifting between belief and fatigue. He has sinned, he knows, everyone has. He thinks of the times he has cursed the weather, of the anger he feels when the reeve's lash cuts too deep, of the small lies told to keep a little more grain. He crosses himself and murmurs the prayer, hoping it will be enough. When the service ends, the villagers step out into the light, blinking as though the world has been remade. The priest stands by the door, offering blessings. his eyes sharp as he watches who bows, who hesitates. His hand falls on the man's head briefly, the weight of it both blessing and reminder. God sees all, he says quietly. The man nods, murmuring, "Aye, Father." Outside, the children chase each other among the gravestones, their laughter rising above the solemn murmurs of the elders. The wife speaks briefly with other women, sharing news and small worries. The priest's words cling to her about the sins of the flesh, about pride, about the need for purity of heart. She tries to believe that her quiet life is enough, that her faith will shield her from the darkness that the priest so often warns of. Yet fear lingers, as it always does. Fear of sickness, fear of storms, fear of death without confession. The priest says the devil walks among men tempting them, whispering in dreams. Sometimes, when the wind howls through the trees at night, the villagers remember his words and cross themselves in the dark. The man returns home silent. His wife walks beside him, their children running ahead. The road curves through the fields where the stubble of last season's harvest catches the light. For a moment, it seems peaceful, yet beneath the quiet lies a tension, the sense that unseen eyes are always watching. That evening, the priest visits the cottage. He comes sometimes without warning, checking on his flock. The wife opens the door and bows her head. The priest blesses the house, mutters a prayer, and sits by the fire. His eyes roam over the small room, the modest table, the spinning wheel, the herbs hanging from the rafters. Be cautious with those, he says, gesturing to the herbs. Some plants are good for healing, others open the door to darker forces. The wife nods, lowering her gaze. Yes, Father, only for fever and cough. He studies her a moment longer, then turns to the man. You work hard, he says. God sees that. But remember, toil is not enough. Confession cleanses the soul. Come to me before the week's end. The man promises he will. The priest rises, sprinkles a little holy water near the door, and leaves. His shadow stretches long across the yard before it disappears into the dusk. After he is gone, silence fills the house. The wife stares at the fire, her thoughts restless. She has heard the stories whispered among women, of those accused of consorting with spirits, of the girl from the next village who disappeared after being called a witch. It does not take much, a wrong word, a strange dream, an herb that heals too well. She feels the weight of that fear pressing against her chest, though she says nothing. The children fall asleep quickly. The man sits by the fire, sharpening a small knife, his movements slow. The priest means well, he says finally, though his voice holds no conviction. She nods, still staring at the flames. The wind outside sighs against the walls, carrying the faint cry of an owl from the woods. In the flicker of the firelight, the shadows move strangely. The man sees shapes in them, not faces, not quite, but forms that shift like smoke. He blinks, and they are gone. The wife glances at him, sensing his unease, but neither speaks of it. That night, sleep comes fitfully. The wife dreams of the church, of the priest's voice echoing like thunder, of the forest beyond the fields. In her dream, the trees are full of light, and a figure stands among them, tall, radiant, silent. It reaches out its hand, not in threat but in invitation. She wakes suddenly, her heart racing, the sound of the wind at the window like a whisper she cannot quite understand. Beside her, the man sleeps on. The children breathe softly. The fire has burned low. She lies awake, staring into the dark, torn between the faiths she has been taught, and something deeper, a pull older than the prayers, older than fear itself. Outside, the bell of the church tolls once, marking midnight. Its sound drifts across the fields, through the sleeping village, up into the black sky. The stars seem to tremble, and far beyond, in the forest heart, something stirs, not evil, not good, only ancient. The next morning breaks gray and silent, a thin veil of mist lying heavy across the fields. The man rises before the dawn bell, his movements slow, his body sore from the week's work. The fire has burned out during the night, and the air inside the cottage is cold enough to sting his breath. He stirs the ashes, adds a few sticks, and blows until the flame returns, pale and flickering. The smoke curls upward like a ghost, finding the cracks in the roof. Outside, the land waits, the damp soil, the low hum of wind through the hedgerows, the far-off murmur of a stream. He steps out into it, his boots sinking into the mud, and feels the old rhythm of the earth beneath his feet. The day's labor calls him back to the same endless motions, cutting, mending, carrying, enduring. The forest stands on the horizon, its outline dark against the washed-out sky. It has always been there, vast and brooding, like a second presence in their lives, a boundary, a warning, a secret. The villagers speak of it with respect and unease, for no one truly knows what lies deep inside. Only hunters and woodcutters venture beyond the edge, and even they tread carefully, muttering prayers when the wind begins to sound like voices. The man glances toward it as he shoulders his hoe. He remembers the stories told by the elders when he was a boy, of spirits that guard the heart of the forest, of lights that lead travelers astray, of those who vanish among the trees and are never seen again. Once, so long ago, before the priests came, people offered bread and milk to the forest spirits. Now they offer only silence. But the silence, he thinks, is not enough to keep the old things away. He works through the morning, sweat mingling with the chill air. By midday, the clouds begin to thin, and sunlight falls in long slanted beams across the field. The earth smells of life and decay, rich and heavy. When he stops to rest, he can hear the forest breathing, or perhaps it is only the wind shifting through its branches, carrying whispers that sound almost like words. At the cottage, the wife tends to her spinning, her fingers moving with steady rhythm. The wheel hums, the thread lengthens, and the sound fills the room with a calm that feels both soothing and distant. Outside, her daughter plays by the doorway, arranging stones in neat little circles. The boy has gone to the pasture again, his stick in hand, the geese waddling obediently beforehand. The wife's thoughts wander. She works. She thinks of the dream, the light among the trees, the figure that called without words. It has haunted her all day, slipping between her tasks like a shadow she cannot shake. She knows she should pray, should speak to the priest, should cast the dream away. But something in her heart resists. The dream felt alive in a way the world rarely does. When the man returns, the sun is beginning to sink. He looks tired, the skin around his eyes drawn tight. Over supper, he speaks little. The children chatter. The wife watches him, sensing a heaviness she cannot name. "I saw something today," he says finally, his voice low, "by the edge of the forest." She looks up. "What was it?" "I don't know. A shape. It moved against the trees, but not like a man. It was too tall, too still." She shivers. "Maybe it was just a deer." He shakes his head. "No, it was watching." The room falls silent except for the crackle of the fire. The children glance between their parents, uneasy but curious. The boy opens his mouth to speak, but his mother hushes him with a look. That night, neither man nor wife sleeps well. Outside, the wind rises, whistling through the cracks in the door. It carries with it the scent of pine and damp earth, as if the forest itself is breathing closer. The wife lies awake, her eyes open to the dark, and listens. At first, it is only the wind. Then, faintly, she hears something else, a sound like distant footsteps, soft and deliberate, circling the house. She grips her rosary, whispering a prayer. The beads feel cold in her hands. The sound fades, then returns, closer this time. She holds her breath, counting the heartbeats. When she finally dares to look toward the window, she sees only her own reflection in the faint moonlight, and behind it, for a moment, the outline of something tall and pale. She gasps, sitting upright. The man stirs beside her, his eyes snapping open. "What is it?" "Someone outside," she whispers. "I saw." He rises, grabbing the small axe from beside the door. When he steps out into the yard, the air hits him like water, cold, heavy, still. The moon hangs above the forest, a thin blade of silver. He listens, eyes scanning the shadows. Nothing moves. only the sound of leaves rustling softly, as if something large has just passed through. He stands there for a long moment, then lowers the axe. His heart beats hard, but he tells himself it was nothing. He turns back toward the house. From the edge of the trees, something glimmers, faint, blue, almost like a flame. Then it disappears. The next day, the village hums with whispers. A shepherd claims he saw lights in the forest before dawn, cold fire, he calls it, not like any lantern or star. Others laugh uneasily, saying he must have dreamed it. But the talk spreads. Some recall the old tales, the ones the priest forbade them to repeat. Spirits, will-o'-the-wisps, wanderers from the old world before the cross. The priest hears of it by midday. At Vespers, his sermon burns hotter than ever. The devil walks among you, he says, his voice echoing from the stone walls. He takes many forms: beast, shadow, temptation. Beware the forest, for it hides the ancient enemy who seeks your soul. The villagers murmur, crossing themselves. The wife bows her head, but her heart is in turmoil. For in her dream, the figure in the forest did not feel like evil. It felt like truth. That night, the wind falls silent again. The boy cannot sleep. He lies awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking of his father's story, of the strange light. Curiosity burns in him stronger than fear. When the moon rises high, he slips from his bed, barefoot and quiet. He takes his small stick, the one he uses to herd the geese, and steps outside. The world is still, silver with frost. He walks toward the edge of the forest, each step soft on the frozen ground. The trees rise before him like walls, black and towering. He hesitates only once, then crosses the line where the field ends and the woods begin. Inside, the air changes. It feels thick, alive, full of unseen movement. The boy's breath clouds before him. He hears water somewhere nearby, the murmur of a stream. The light he expected, the strange blue glow, is nowhere to be seen. Yet the forest itself seems to glow faintly, as if lit from within. He walks deeper, past twisted roots and mossy stones. Every sound feels amplified. The creak of branches, the crack of twigs beneath his feet, the soft pulse of his own heartbeat. Then, suddenly he sees it, a shimmer between the trees, tall and graceful, like a column of moonlight given form. It moves slowly, as though aware of him. The boy's fear melts into awe. He cannot speak, cannot run. The light bends toward him, and for a moment he feels warmth, as if the sun itself has touched his skin. Then the light fades. The forest darkens again. He stands there trembling, his heart racing, unsure if what he saw was real. When he finally returns home, the first light of dawn is breaking. His mother stands at the door, her face pale, her hands clenched around her rosary. She rushes to him, gathers him close, and whispers, "What have you done?" The boy looks back toward the forest. "It wasn't bad, Mama," he says softly. "It was beautiful." Her heart fills with dread, for she knows beauty in the dark is the most dangerous thing of all. The morning after the boy's return from the forest dawns pale and uneasy. The air feels strange, as though the sky itself has forgotten how to breathe. The mist clings low over the fields, and even the crows are silent. Inside the cottage, the fire burns sluggishly, the smoke curling against the roof beams before finding its way out. The wife moves quietly through the room, her hands trembling slightly as she kneads the dough. She keeps glancing toward the door, as though expecting something to appear there. The boy sits by the hearth, his face washed, his hair still damp from the water she poured over him in haste, muttering half-prayers under her breath. He looks calm, almost dazed, staring into the fire as if something in the flames is speaking to him. His sister watches him from the corner, clutching her doll of rags and straw, too frightened to speak. The man returns from the field later than usual. His face is lined, his expression unreadable. He has already heard from the neighbors. Word travels fast in the village. Someone saw the boy near the forest at dawn. Someone else said they heard voices, strange sounds, like singing carried by the wind. When he enters the house, the air inside thickens. The wife looks at him with pleading eyes. "He went to the forest," she whispers. The man says nothing for a moment. He sets down his tools, sits by the table, and looks at his son. "Tell me what you saw." The boy hesitates, then speaks in a quiet voice. "There was light, Father. It wasn't fire, and it wasn't the moon. It moved like it was alive. It looked at me." "Did it speak?" He shakes his head. "No words, but I felt it, like it wanted me to follow." The man's face hardens. He crosses himself. "You've brought danger on this house." The wife flinches. "He's a child. He didn't know." "Knowing or not," the man replies, "the forest takes what it touches. You've heard the tales." That evening, the priest comes again. He seems to know before they can speak. His eyes sharp, his voice edged with something like fear disguised as anger. "There are forces that test the faithful," he says, pacing before the hearth. "Temptations that take the form of light and beauty. You must guard your hearts, lest you be led astray." He kneels before the boy, his hands on the child's shoulders. "Did it speak to you, my son? Did it promise anything?" The boy shakes his head. "No, Father." The priest studies him for a long moment, then releases him. "Pray," he says finally. "Pray and keep away from the forest. There are things older than the church that would see you damned." When he leaves, the house feels colder. The wife lights another candle and places it by the window, a small flame against the gathering dark. The boy watches it flicker, his face unreadable. Days pass, but the unease lingers. The man works, the wife prays. The children keep close to the cottage. Yet sometimes, when the wind blows from the west, it carries with it a faint sound like distant singing, faint as breath. The boy hears it first, then the girl. They tell no one, but at night, when they lie awake, they can feel the pull of it. One afternoon, the wife walks to the stream to wash the linen. The air is heavy, the sun veiled by clouds. The forest looms nearby, its branches reaching like fingers over the water. As she bends to scrub a sheet against the stones, she hears movement, soft, deliberate, just beyond the trees. She straightens, heart pounding. "Who's there?" she calls. No answer, only the drip of water, the faint rustle of leaves. Then she sees it, a glimmer between the trunks, the shimmer pale gold, gone as quickly as it came. She crosses herself, whispers a prayer, and gathers her things in haste. As she turns to leave, she feels a warmth on her back, as though sunlight has broken through the clouds. But when she looks up, the sky is gray. That night, she cannot sleep. The memory of that warmth stays with her, both frightening and strangely comforting. She dreams again, the same figure among the trees, the same outstretched hand. But this time, she sees its face. It is neither man nor woman, neither old nor young. Its eyes hold something vast, something that feels like sorrow. When she wakes, tears are on her cheeks. She sits up, trembling, whispering to herself. She knows she should tell her husband, tell the priest, beg forgiveness for her curiosity. But something deeper inside her refuses. The dream was not evil. It felt like a truth she had forgotten. The next day, a storm gathers. The wind howls through the thatch, the rain lashes the walls, and thunder rolls over the hills. The villagers stay inside, crossing themselves as lightning flashes. The priest says the storm is a sign God's anger at those who stray. But the wife feels otherwise. She sits by the window, watching the rain sweep across the fields, and feels as though the forest itself is speaking through the storm. When the thunder finally fades, the world seems washed clean. The air is sharp, the ground slick with water. The man goes out to check the fences. The wife stands in the doorway, her shawl pulled tight, and sees something strange at the forest's edge, footprints in the mud, too large to be her husband's, too deep to belong to any animal she knows. She follows them a few steps before stopping. They lead from the trees toward the stream, then vanish. She feels the pull again, that same quiet summons she felt in the dream. For a moment, she wants to go farther. Then she hears her name, It is her husband's voice calling from behind. She turns quickly, the spell broken. When she looks back, the prints are gone, as if the earth itself has swallowed them. That evening, the air inside the house feels close and heavy. The children sit silent, sensing something in the air that words cannot touch. The wife hums softly as she spins an old tune she does not remember learning. The melody feels older than the church, older than the village, something carried down through blood and soil. When the man asks what she hums, she only shakes her head. Just something that came to me, she says. Later, when they lie down to sleep, the wind stirs again. From far off, deep in the forest, a sound rises, faint, almost musical. It weaves through the night air, haunting and beautiful, full of longing. The boy hears it and sits up, his heart quickening. He looks toward the window, where the candle has burned low. The light outside pulses softly, as though answering. The wife stirs beside him and opens her eyes. For a moment, mother and son share the same gaze, not at each other, but at the faint glow beyond the field. Neither speaks. They both feel it, the call of something vast, ancient, and alive beneath the boughs. In the silence that follows, even the wind seems to listen. The morning after the storm breaks clear and blue, the air fresh, the ground still slick with last night's rain. The fields gleam under a sky scrubbed clean of cloud. The forest, however, seems darker for its edges dense, secretive, the branches dripping slowly as if unwilling to release what they have held through the night. The man walks the boundary of his land, checking for damage. The fences stand, the thatch holds, but his thoughts are elsewhere. He keeps glancing toward the trees. The memory of the prince his wife described has unsettled him. He believes her without question. She is not given to fancies, but he cannot name what might have made them. Deer, perhaps, or something worse. At the cottage, the wife tends the hearth. The children sit quietly near her, the boy carving a small piece of wood with his dull knife, the girl braiding scraps of twine into a circle. The sound of the knife scraping wood blends with the low crackle of the fire, creating a rhythm both soothing and strange. Outside, the birds sing again as if the world had never known fear. But in the heart of the family, silence reigns. They do not speak of the forest now, nor of the dream, nor of the light. It is as though an invisible oath binds them all. The wife, the boy, even the girl, each carries knowledge they cannot voice. By noon, the priest returns. He brings news from the next village. Another child has gone missing. They found his shoes near the brook. He says grimly, "Empty?" He looks at the boy, then at the mother. "You must not let your children wander. There are snares of spirit and shadow laid for the innocent." The man thanks him, promises obedience. The priest blesses the doorway again, sprinkling holy water until the floor glistens. His prayers roll like thunder, but the boy, sitting near the fire, feels only cold. When the priest leaves, the wife wipes the wet spots from the floor and whispers to herself, "No prayer can wash away the earth." The afternoon passes in work and silence. The man mends the plow. The wife spins and kneads. The children gather nettles for dyeing thread. Yet beneath each movement lies tension, as though they move not by will but by the weight of something unseen. As twilight deepens, a chill drifts from the forest. The air thickens. The geese, restless in their pen, hiss and shuffle. The boy stands by the door, watching the tree line. The shadows lengthen, merge, become one unbroken wall of darkness. Then, faintly, a voice. It comes from the woods, low and clear, a tone that might be human, might be wind. He cannot tell the words, only the shape of them, like a lullaby sung by someone who remembers his name. His hand tightens on the doorframe. He should turn away, but something deeper moves in him, something that feels older than fear. The same warmth he felt that night touches his skin again. For a heartbeat, he steps forward, but then his mother's voice cuts through the trance. "Come inside." He obeys. When she closes the door, she does not look at him. Her face is pale, her eyes distant. She has heard it too. That night, the wind changes direction. It blows from the forest, carrying scents of damp moss, and cold stone. The man dreams of the bell tower collapsing, the priest shouting without sound, and the sky above the church turning black. He wakes with a start, sweat on his brow, the air heavy as iron. The wife lies beside him, her eyes open. She has not slept. "It's calling," she says quietly. He stares at her. "Don't speak of it. It won't stop because we're silent." "It must," he says, his voice sharp. "If we name it, it grows stronger. We keep our tongues until it forgets us." Her lips press together. She nods once. From that moment, the oath of silence takes hold. Days pass. The forest grows restless. At night, animals cry and fall still. Tracks appear near the fields, circles pressed deep into the wet earth, as if something heavy had stood watching. The villagers whisper of curses, of the old gods waking beneath the roots. The priest declares a fast, a week of prayer and penance. No laughter, no song, only repentance. The wife obeys, but her heart is elsewhere. In secret, she hums the old melody again, so softly even the children cannot hear. When she hums, the fire burns steadier, the room feels warmer. The boy watches, his eyes wide. "Why do you do that?" He whispers one evening. "It's not prayer," she answers. "It's memory." He doesn't understand, but the tone comforts him. It feels like home, like the earth speaking in her voice. On the 5th night of fasting, the priest's bell rings at midnight. The sound is frantic, unholy. The man runs from the house, joining the others already in the lane. The bell keeps clanging uneven, wild. When they reach the church, they find the priest standing barefoot in the doorway, his vestments soaked with rain, his eyes unfocused. "They are here," he whispers. "The old ones. They walk the wood again." He collapses. The villagers carry him inside, laying him before the altar. His hands are clenched around a clump of black moss. No one knows where it came from. By dawn, the priest lies fevered and silent. His lips move as if reciting prayers, but no sound comes. The villagers whisper that he has been touched by the forest. The man returns home shaken, afraid to tell his wife what he saw. But when he opens the door, he finds her kneeling by the hearth, humming the same low tune, the children asleep beside her. "Stop that," he says hoarsely. "They'll hear." She looks up. They already do. The words strike him like a blow. He turns away, unable to answer. That evening, a strange calm settles over the village. No wind, no birds, no movement. The sky glows faintly even after sunset, a gray-green light that seems to come from nowhere. The people stay inside, praying or pretending not to tremble. In the cottage, the family sits together, the fire burning low. The boy feels the air change again, the warmth returning, steady and alive. His mother closes her eyes, and for the first time, she begins to sing not the church hymns, but something older. The sound fills the room, deep and resonant, the language unknown yet familiar to all who hear it. The man rises, needing to stop her, but his knees give out. The girl wakes and listens, her face lit with wonder. The tune wraps around them like light, and outside, the forest seems to sway to its rhythm. When the last note fades, the silence that follows is absolute. Then, from far away, a reply, soft, melodic, impossibly vast, the forest singing back. The wife opens her eyes, tears streaming down her face. The man covers his ears. The children sit frozen. The reply fades, leaving only the sound of their breathing. The candle sputters. The fire dies. In the darkness, the wife whispers, almost to herself, "They remember us." No one speaks again for the rest of the night. The next morning comes without birdsong. The sky is dull, colorless, as if the sun itself has grown weary. The man wakes before the dawn bell, but the air feels thick, unmoving. Even the usual rustle of the wind through the thatch is gone. He sits at the table, his head bowed, listening to the silence. It presses against his chest, heavy as stone. The wife still sleeps, though her face is pale, her breath shallow. The children lie tangled together on their straw pallet, the boy's hand resting protectively over his sister's. The man watches them for a long time. The image should fill him with peace, but instead he feels dread, a slow, creeping certainty that something has changed forever. He steps outside. The ground is damp from dew, the air cold. He looks toward the forest. It stands motionless, black against the faint gray of the sky. Yet as he watches, he sees something strange, a faint shimmer near the roots of the trees like fireflies before dawn. He blinks, and the lights vanish. When he returns to the cottage, his wife is awake. She sits by the hearth, her eyes distant, her hands folded on her lap. "Did you hear them last night?" she asks softly. He hesitates. "I heard nothing. They were beneath us," she whispers. "In the earth, singing." He feels a chill run through him. "You must not speak of it." "I cannot stop hearing it," she says. "Even now, it hums in my bones." He looks at her, the woman he has shared his whole life with, and sees that she is somewhere else entirely. The lines of her face are the same, the eyes he has known, the hands that have worked beside his. But something in her gaze has turned inward, deeper than any mortal thought. At midday, he goes to the church. The priest lies still on a pallet, feverish and pale. The reeve and two old women tend to him, but their faces are full of fear. His lips move without sound, and his eyes, when they open, seem to look beyond the room. The man kneels beside him and murmurs a prayer, but the priest's hand jerks suddenly, clutching his wrist. "Not all that glows is holy," the priest rasps, his voice raw, broken. "The light beneath the roots it remembers before God." The man stumbles back, shaken. When he leaves the church, the sun is low and red, staining the fields like blood. That evening, he finds his wife outside, kneeling in the garden. The children watch from the doorway. She is digging, not planting, not harvesting, just digging into the earth with her bare hands. Her nails are black with soil. Her lips move as she hums the old song, the one that had called the forest to answer. He rushes to her, seizing her wrists. "Stop this." Her eyes meet his, calm and distant. "It's not wrong to touch the earth," she says. "It's ours. It remembers us." "You speak madness," he says, though his voice breaks. She smiles faintly. "No, the madness was forgetting." He pulls her inside, scrubbing her hands clean in the basin, but the dirt clings to her skin as if it will not let go. That night she refuses to eat, her gaze fixed on the window. The forest glows faintly again, not bright, but enough to be seen, a soft pulse like a heart beating in the soil. The boy cannot sleep. He rises quietly and stands beside his mother. Together they watch the distant shimmer. "What is it?" he whispers. "It's life," she says. "The first life, before men, before prayers." "Does it want us?" "Yes," she murmurs. "It wants what it always had." The following day, strange things begin to happen. The well water turns cloudy, though it tastes sweet. Flowers bloom out of season near the hedgerows. A calf is born with white eyes, silent, breathing but unmoving until sunset. The villagers gather in small, frightened clusters, whispering of signs, of punishment. Some say the priest's sickness has cursed the land, others say the forest has woken. The man tries to work, but the soil feels strange beneath his hoe, soft, almost warm, as though something stirs just beneath. When he thrusts the blade deeper, he hears a faint sound, not quite a crack, not quite a breath. He drops the tool and steps back, trembling. That night, the air hums again, not just from the forest, from the ground itself, a vibration so low it seems to come from inside the bones. The wife begins to sing in her sleep, the same wordless tune. The children wake and sit up, frightened and fascinated all at once. The man shakes her gently. "Wake up." Her eyes open, but they are not the same. They shimmer faintly, reflecting the dim light from outside. "They are calling," she says. "We cannot hide forever." He steps back, horror and sorrow twisting within him. "You're not yourself." "I am more myself than ever," she replies. She stands barefoot and walks to the door. The boy follows without thought. The man tries to stop them. But when he grabs her arm, the air seems to thicken, and a pulse runs through the floorboards like a heartbeat. The candlelight flickers wildly. Outside, the forest glows brighter now, not blue, not gold, but green, the color of new leaves and deep moss. It spreads slowly, touching the edges of the field, seeping into the furrows of the earth. The wife steps forward, her bare feet sinking slightly into the wet soil. The hum grows louder. "Do you see?" she whispers. "It's not evil. It's memory." The boy reaches for her hand. The light spreads around their feet, soft and warm. For a moment, the man sees not his wife and son but figures woven from light, like the carvings in the old chapel windows, saints made of living color. Then, as quickly as it came, the vision fades. He blinks, and they are standing there again, ordinary and human, though the earth beneath them glows faintly through the mud. He pulls them both back inside and bars the door. The wife does not resist. She sits before the hearth, silent, her hands folded once more. Outside, the forest quiets, but the glow remains, faint as breath. The man stares at it through the window until his eyes ache. It feels like a heartbeat, slow and patient, waiting. The next morning, the priest is dead. The bell tolls at dawn 3 times, then stops. The villagers bury him in haste, no one willing to linger near the churchyard. They speak of purging and fasting, of salt and scripture. But as the coffin is lowered into the ground, a thin sprout of green pushes through the fresh soil. No one touches it. That night, the wife dreams again. She stands in the forest, and the light surrounds her. She hears voices speaking in the old tongue, the language of rain, of roots, of breath. They tell her what she already knows. The world is remembering itself, and it will not be stopped. She wakes, and outside the window, the fields shine faintly in the dark, as though the soil has learned to glow from within. By the 7th day after the priest's death, no bell rings in the village. The tower stands silent, its rope unpulled, its iron tongue hanging motionless in the damp air. The church doors remain closed, and a thin vine creeps along the stone steps, pale and glistening with dew, though no rain has fallen for days. The man wakes before dawn, as he always has, but the world feels changed. The familiar sounds of the morning, the bleating of sheep, the crowing of the rooster are absent. Even the wind is gone, as though the air itself waits. He sits on the edge of the bed, staring at his hands. The skin beneath his nails is still stained dark from yesterday's soil, though he washed them until they bled. The wife rises silently. Her eyes are calm, but there is something in her expression he does not recognize, a certainty that no prayer could ever touch. She moves to the window, pulling the cloth aside. The fields shimmer faintly in the half-light, each furrow glowing like the veins of a living thing. The man sees her lips move as though she is listening to something distant. "You hear it again," he says, his voice low. "It never stopped," she replies. "You just refuse to listen." He turns away. "I hear enough. The world itself has turned strange. I will not lose my soul to whispers in the ground." The children stir on their straw bed. The boy sits up, rubbing his eyes. "Mother," he whispers, "there are faces in the dirt." The man's head snaps toward him. "What faces?" "Last night," the boy says softly, "when the moon came out, I saw them under the soil by the field. Not people, just shapes, like they were breathing." The wife's face pales, but she only murmurs, "They've always been there. We just forgot their names." The man's patience breaks. "No more of this. You'll drive him mad. You'll drive us all to ruin." He storms outside, the cold air biting his lungs. The ground squelches underfoot, but there has been no rain. He kneels and touches the soil, it's soft, pulsing faintly, as if it holds warmth. When he presses his hand deeper, a hum travels up his arm. For an instant, he feels not fear but awe, the sensation of being held by something vast, patient, and old. He jerks his hand back, gasping. His palm bears a faint greenish mark, like veins glowing beneath the skin. He scrubs it against his tunic until it fades. At midday, The reeve gathers the men of the village. They meet in the churchyard, avoiding the grave of the priest. A few speak of fleeing, of burning the forest before it swallows them all. Others, pale and trembling, say it would be blasphemy to defy what has woken. The man stands apart, listening. When his turn comes, he says, the earth is changing. I've seen it move. No wall or fire will hold it. We must remember what came before. The reeve glares at him. You speak like one of the old pagans. Remember your vows. The man says nothing. He looks at the church, the wooden cross above its door. The vine climbing the wall has reached the lintel. Tiny buds form along it, buds that glow faintly, even in daylight. That night, the wife does not eat. She sits by the hearth, her gaze distant. The boy and girl whisper together, tracing patterns in the ash with their fingers. The man watches them all and feels himself drifting toward despair. When the candle gutters low, the wife stands and takes his hand. Come, she says. He follows her outside into the dark. The sky is thick with low clouds, the air damp and still. They walk past the field, past the hedgerow, until they reach the edge of the forest. The trees shimmer faintly, their bark slick with light. The air hums around them a deep, steady tone, neither threatening nor kind. The wife kneels and presses her palm to the soil. They're not spirits, she says softly. They're roots, memories of what we were before the church, before the plow. The earth remembers every footstep we've taken, every word buried in its dust, and now it speaks. The man shakes his head. The priest said the light beneath the roots was older than God, that it should be feared. He was half right, she says. It is older, but it is not cruel. It asks only to be known. She looks up at him, her eyes shining faintly in the green glow. Touch it, just once. He hesitates, then kneels beside her. The ground feels alive beneath his fingers. It hums, low and constant, the same tone he felt through the plow, through the walls of the house. Images flicker behind his eyes, fields without fences, rivers running silver under vast forests, people dancing barefoot in circles of stone. The scent of soil fills his lungs until he cannot tell where his body ends and the earth begins. He pulls back, gasping, half in terror, half in wonder. She smiles sadly. You felt it. You can't deny it now. He stands, trembling. If this is truth, it will destroy us. The church will call it sin. The church is built on what it forgot, she whispers. When they return home, the children are awake, sitting by the door. The boy's hands are covered in dirt. I dreamed of the roots, he says. They were reaching for me. The wife kneels beside him. Don't be afraid. They remember love too. Over the next days, the signs spread. The well water glows at night. Stones in the path pulse faintly like breathing skin. A lamb is born with markings like leaves along its back. The villagers no longer go to the forest, they bar their doors and whisper prayers in trembling voices. One evening, thunder rolls across the hills though no lightning follows. The sky flickers green, and a deep vibration rises from the ground, shaking the cottages. Pots fall from shelves. The geese scream in their pens. The man rushes outside. The earth between the fields has cracked open in a narrow seam, glowing with soft light. From within comes a sound not human, not animal, but vast, like wind through roots that stretch to the center of the world. The wife steps beside him, unafraid. It's waking fully now, she says. He stares into the fissure. Beneath the glow, he sees movement slow, winding, like branches twisting beneath the surface. Is it life? He whispers. It's what came before life, she answers. And what will remain after? The ground trembles again, and he grips her hand. The light flares once, then dims, fading back into the soil. The crack closes as if it had never been. The night falls silent. The man drops to his knees, overcome. The wife touches his shoulder gently. It's not finished, she says. It's only remembering. And when it remembers everything, the world will change. He looks up at her, tears streaking his face. And what will become of us? She gazes toward the forest, where the faint green glow still flickers between the trunks. That depends, she says, on whether we choose to fear what made us or listen. Inside the cottage, the children dream of roots spreading beneath their beds, whispering in voices older than words. The air hums softly, and the soil blows faintly through the cracks in the floor. By dawn, the forest will breathe again. The dawn rises with no color. A pale haze covers the fields, thick as breath, blurring the edges of everything. Even the sun seems hesitant, a dull disk behind shifting mist. The village wakes in an easy silence. Doors creak open, people step outside and stare at the sky, then at the earth, as though both have turned unfamiliar overnight. The man stands at his threshold, feeling the air heavy against his chest. The mist clings to him, damp and cool, but beneath it there's warmth, a slow, rhythmic pulse rising through the soles of his feet. The same pulse that has haunted his dreams, that now beats beneath every furrow and root. The wife comes to stand beside him, her hair unbound, her face calm as stone. "It's spreading," she murmurs. He nods. He can see it now, faint veins of light creeping through the fields like threads of firefly glow, tracing the shape of the land. The furrows shimmer softly, alive with something unseen. Behind them, the children watch in silence. The boy's eyes are wide, unblinking. The girl clutches her wooden doll so tightly its painted face cracks. From across the fields comes shouting the Reeve's voice, hoarse with fear. Men run from house to house, crying warnings, clutching torches though the light of dawn is already upon them. "Seal your doors," one of them calls. The earth split again by the churchyard. The roots move. The man feels his heart quicken, but the wife does not move. "They think they can burn it," she says quietly, as if flame can silence memory. He glances at her. "They'll try, and they'll die if they do." He steps forward, meaning to join them, but her hand closes around his wrist. "If you go, it will change you," she says. "Once you see what's beneath, you'll never pray the same way again." He hesitates only a moment, then pulls free. "I must see. If it means madness, so be it." He walks through the mist toward the churchyard. The closer he gets, the stronger the hum becomes, a deep, resonant tone that vibrates through his ribs and skull. The air smells of moss and wet stone. The villagers stand in a wide ringer on the priest's grave. The soil there has split open in a perfect circle, like a mouth yawning beneath the cross, like pores from the fissure, green and gold and pale blue all at once. The people recoil from it, clutching their torches and crosses, muttering half-remembered prayers. The Reeve shouts for calm, but no one listens. One of the younger men throws his torch into the opening. It flares briefly, then is swallowed whole. The light from the ground brightens, pulsing once like a heartbeat. The hum deepens until the air itself seems to groan. The man steps forward, drawn despite himself. He kneels at the edge of the pit. Beneath the surface, he sees movement, roots twisting and unwinding, vast as serpents coiling through the earth in impossible patterns. For a moment he thinks he sees faces within the glow, human, perhaps, or only the illusion of them, mouths moving soundlessly as if in song. The Reeve grabs his shoulder. "Stand back, fool." But the man does not move. He feels warmth seep into his bones, not burning, not painful, only heavy with understanding. He speaks without meaning to. "They are not demons." The Reeve stares at him, horrified. "What are they then?" "The beginning?" The words come from somewhere deeper than thought, as if borrowed from another tongue. The man stands slowly, turning to face the villagers. "They remember us," he says, "and they're calling us to remember them." A murmur of fear runs through the crowd. The Reeve raises his torch, his face hard. "Blasphemy! You bring ruin upon us all." Before he can strike, the earth beneath him shifts. The torch falls, sputtering. The ground opens again, not wide but deep, a single crack running toward the church. The wooden cross before the door trembles, then splinters in two. The villagers scatter, screaming. The man steps back, watching in awe as vines push through the split soil, climbing the church walls with impossible speed. Leaves unfurl like hands reaching toward the light. In moments, The gray stone is veiled in green. He returns home through the mist, his body trembling but his heart strangely steady. The wife waits by the door. "You saw it," she says, not a question. He nods. "It's not evil." "I know," she says. "It's what we forgot to bless." That evening, the village is quiet. The people hide behind barred doors. The air glows faintly, the hum constant but gentle now, like the sound of breath. Inside the cottage, the wife lights no fire. The warmth comes from the floor itself, from the earth beneath. She sits with the children, combing the girl's hair, humming softly. The man watches her and feels the last of his fear dissolve into something like reverence. "Do you think it will take us?" he asks. "It already has," she answers. "We are not apart from it. We never were." As night falls, a new sound joins the hum, a faint chime, like glass striking stone. Outside, tiny blossoms open across the field, glowing faintly in the dark. The villagers watch from their windows, too afraid to touch them. The man cannot look away. The flowers are not of any kind he knows. Their petals shimmer between colors white, gold, and green, and their centers pulse with a slow rhythm. When he kneels to examine one, the soil beneath it breathes. The boy kneels beside him. "It's alive," he whispers. "It always was," the man says. The wife stands at the doorway, her voice calm, her face luminous in the strange light. "The earth remembers," she says. "It's only waiting for us to listen." That night, no one in the village sleeps. The ground hums like the low tone of a distant bell. The vines on the church bloom under the moonlight, each flower opening like an eye. The mist glows faintly from within, not with fire, but with life. Near dawn, a single sound cuts through the air, a deep note, not from any bell forged by hands. It comes from beneath the soil, from the heart of the world itself. Every living thing pauses to hear it. The man takes his wife's hand. The children press close. "It's beginning," she whispers. He nods. "Or ending." And the earth breathes, slow and certain beneath their feet. By the next morning, the world has taken on the stillness of waiting. A haze of color hangs in the air, not fog, not smoke, but something finer, a breath of light that lingers over every roof and hedge. It turns the simplest thing, the outline of a leaf, the curve of a hand, into a living shadow. The villagers keep to their homes. The children no longer run in the lanes. The men no longer call to one another across the fields. The only sound is the hum from below, steady as a heartbeat. The man wakes with that sound inside him. It is no longer only in the earth. It lives beneath his ribs, in the slow rhythm of his pulse. When he stands, the floor beneath his bare feet feels soft, not like wood but like soil. He looks down and sees a faint sheen of green between the cracks. The wife stands by the door, hair loose, eyes half closed as though she listens to something distant. "It grows faster now," she says quietly. He nods. The walls themselves seem to have changed overnight. The wattle gleams faintly, alive with damp moss. The thatch smells of leaves after rain. The cottage feels less like a shelter than a root dug into something vast and breathing. The boy bursts in from outside, his face pale. "Father, come see." They follow him to the edge of the field. Every furrow has sprouted new growth, though it is too early in the season to call for seed to wake. Long shoots of green spiral from the soil, curling around one another, climbing into shapes that look almost like letters. The man kneels, touching one of the shoots. It trembles under his hand, then stills. "They spell something," the boy whispers. The wife crouches beside them. "No letters," he says. "It's the old tongue, the one the trees remember." Before the man can answer, a cry rises from the village. They turn toward it. From the direction of the church, smoke curls upward, black against the pale sky. The reeve and his men have set fire to the vines. They move like madmen, swinging torches, shouting prayers. The vines curl and hiss, shrinking from the flames, but the fire burns strangely. Its smoke glows green, and instead of spreading, it coils back toward the ground as though drawn downward. The villagers scatter in panic as the fire sinks into the soil, snuffed without a trace. The church stands dark now. its walls blackened but unbroken. In the silence that follows, a single sound echoes through the air, a deep, resonant tone like the ring of iron struck underwater. The man feels it through his feet, up his spine, into his teeth. The wife clutches his arm, trembling but not afraid. "It's speaking," she says. "The earth's answering the fire." By dusk, the glow has thickened. The whole valley is bathed in faint green light. The fields no longer show bare soil. They are carpeted with a fine moss that spreads even over stone. It is not choking the ground, it breathes. When the wind moves, it ripples like water. Inside the cottage, the wife gathers the children close. "Remember this," she says softly. "No matter what comes, remember the warmth of it." The boy frowns. "Are we going somewhere?" "Not we," she says. "Everything." That night, the hum rises higher, closer to a song. The wife begins to hum with it, her voice low, matching its rhythm. The sound fills the small house, wrapping around the children like a blanket. The man sits at the hearth, staring into the ashes. When he closes his eyes, he sees visions, not dreams, but memories that do not belong to him. He sees the land before walls, before names, forests stretching unbroken to the horizon, rivers flashing under endless sky. He sees people dancing around fires made not from wood but from the glow of their own hands. He sees the first plow bite into untouched soil, and the earth flinch as though in pain. He sees the years pass like breaths, the walls, the crosses, the bells, and through it all, the slow forgetting. He wakes with a start. The cottage is filled with light. The wife and children are asleep, their faces peaceful. Outside, the ground gleams faintly, as though dawn has come early. He steps out and stops dead. The forest is moving, not walking, not uprooting, but breathing, its edge rising and falling as if alive. The trees sway without wind, their leaves whispering in words he cannot understand. Between their trunks, faint figures move, tall, pale, neither ghost nor human. They glide among the roots, their hands trilling light. He calls softly, "Who are you?" A voice answers, though no mouth speaks. "You knew us once." He takes a step forward. The voice continues, "You called us the first names of things. Then you forgot and built over us." His breath catches. "What do you want?" "To be remembered." The forest glows brighter, and he sees that the figures are not separate from the trees, but part of them, limbs grown into bark, eyes like sap, movements slow as growth itself. The hum deepens, shaking the air. Behind him, the wife's voice calls, "Come back." He turns. She stands at the edge of the path, the children clinging to her skirts. The glow touches her hair, turning it silver green. "You can't go alone," she says. "The remembering belongs to all of us." He nods. Together they step forward. The moss underfoot is warm. As they cross into the trees, the light thickens until it feels like walking through water. The hum becomes music, not melody but harmony. Vast and ancient, they walk until the forest opens into a clearing that was not there before. In its center stands a stone, half buried, covered in carvings too old to read. The wife kneels beside it, pressing her palm to the cold surface. The light flares under her hand, spreading across the stone like veins awakening. The boy whispers, "It's alive." "It always was," she answers. "We just forgot to listen." The man watches as the carvings shift. For a moment, he sees faces, some human, some not, all gazing outward. Eyes calm. The ground beneath the stone trembles, and a voice rises from the soil, deep as thunder but gentle. The veil lifts. The forest light spills outward, rolling across the valley like a tide. The village below glows as though submerged. Roofs, walls, fields all shimmer under the same green pulse. The people stumble from their houses, crying out. Some fall to their knees, some flee, some simply stare. The vines on the church bloom again, covering the blackened stone with luminous flowers. The cross above the door bends slowly, not breaking, but bowing. The wife turns to the man. "It's not ending," she says. "It's remembering itself." He takes her hand. "Then, let it remember." They stand together as the light spreads. The hum fills every space, every breath. The soil beneath them warms, The air tastes sweet and strange. The trees sway as though in time to an unseen rhythm. When the light reaches its peak, there is no boundary between sky and earth, between man and root, between memory and dream. There is only the sound, the deep, endless heartbeat of the world. The wife closes her eyes, whispering a word older than language. The children repeat it softly. The man feels the pulse within him match the one below. The veil is gone. The world breathes once more. When the world wakes again, it is not to the familiar crow of the cock or the clang of the blacksmith's hammer. It is to silence pure, clean silence, the kind that comes before sound remembers how to form. The air hangs still and heavy with a faint scent of earth after rain. The moss that had spread across the valley has withered into a fine dust, soft as ash. The green glow is gone. In its place is light, ordinary daylight, but sharper, newer, as though the sun itself has just been born. The man stirs first. He lies on the ground outside the cottage, though he does not remember falling asleep. When he sits up, he finds the house half buried in earth and vines, the doorframe swallowed by roots that have hardened into wood. It looks ancient, like something dug out of another age. He calls softly for his wife and children, but his voice sounds strange in the quiet. A moment later, a small hand touches his arm. The boy is beside him, his eyes wide, his hair streaked with green. "Father," he says, "I dreamed the trees were talking." The wife emerges from the shadow of the ruined doorway, carrying the little one. Her face is pale but calm. "They weren't dreams," he says. "They were memories. The land has spoken. We have crossed the night." The man looks around. The fields are still, but not dead. The soil gleams faintly, not with light but with health. It feels thick, rich, alive. The old furrows are gone. In their place are gentle rises, like the breath of sleeping giants beneath the ground. The air hums softly, but not with the sound that once frightened them. It is subtler now, like a heartbeat, too deep to hear with the ears, but felt through the bones. The village looks changed. The crooked line of cottages has softened. Roofs are bowed under moss, and the church stands as a blackened husk, its steeple split. But from every crack and wall, green shoots are pushing through, slender and steady. The vines have not destroyed, they have remade. The villagers gather slowly in the square. Their faces are pale, streaked with ash and wonder. The reeve stands with his cloak torn, his eyes hollow. "It's over," he murmurs. "The curse is lifted." The wife shakes her head. It was never a curse. It was a remembering. Some kneel, crossing themselves. Others stare at the sky, whispering prayers, not knowing to whom they speak. The man says nothing. He feels something vast beneath the silence, as though the ground still listens. Days pass. The people begin to move again, to mend fences, to rebuild roofs. But they do so quietly now. No one speaks loudly. No one mocks the stillness. At dusk, when the shadows stretch long across the hills, they stop their work and listen, not out of fear, but out of reverence. The children play in the meadow, their laughter soft. They find stones marked with faint carvings like the ones on the ancient rock in the forest. They bring them home, and the wife arranges them by the hearth. Each night, when the fire burns low, the carvings catch the light and seem to shift, as if remembering something too deep for words. The man takes to walking the edge of the forest. The trees no longer hum aloud, but when he touches the bark, he feels a pulse under his fingertips. Once he sees a figure among the trunks, a tall shape, pale and silent. It does not frighten him. He nods in greeting, and the figure inclines its head, vanishing into light. One morning, as the mist rises, he finds the stone clearing again. The carvings on the central rock are clearer now, filled with green lichen. He kneels and places his hand upon it. The hum rises faintly, like the echo of a distant bell. "You remember," he says softly. "So do we." When he returns to the village, he finds the reeve waiting for him. The man's hands are rough, his eyes red-rimmed. "I dreamed last night," the reeve says, "that the ground opened and swallowed us whole. But when I woke, there was wheat where the ashes fell." Tell me, was it mercy or warning? The man looks past him to the hills, where light glimmers through the morning haze. Both, he answers. The land forgives, but it never forgets. Through summer and into autumn, the valley flourishes. The harvest is unlike any before, full bright, the grains heavy and golden. The people call it the green year. They sing again, though their songs are slower, older, shaped by memory. They no longer strike the earth with harsh iron. They till it gently with care. One evening, the wife finds the man sitting by the door, gazing at the horizon. The last light of sunset paints the sky with bands of copper and green. She sits beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. Do you ever think it will fade? She asks. He shakes his head. No, it's in us now, in the blood, in the soil. We are part of it. The wind rises, carrying the faint scent of rain, and something sweeter, the memory of the glow. In that moment, the fields seem to shimmer again, not with light but with presence. The wife closes her eyes. Do you hear it? She whispers. He listens. Beneath the wind, beneath the rustle of leaves, there is a faint, familiar hum, steady, endless, alive. Yes, he says. It's the world breathing. That night, he dreams again of the forest. But this time it is not the dark maze of roots and shadows. It is open, filled with light. The trees stand tall, their branches heavy with fruit that glows softly. The figures walk among them, neither spirits nor men, but something between. One of them turns toward him, and though its face is pale and shifting, its eyes are kind. Guard the balance, it says. You are part of the remembering now. He wakes before dawn. The sky outside is deep blue, trembling with the promise of light. The wife stirs beside him, murmuring in her sleep. He rises quietly and steps outside. The world feels new again. The air is cool, clean, and full of quiet expectation. The hum lies just beneath the threshold of hearing, a promise, a warning, a heartbeat. He smiles, not in joy but in recognition. The second dawn has come, not of sun or time, but of memory. And somewhere beneath his feet, deep within the earth, the world hums its ancient song, alive, patient, eternal. The seasons turned again, as they always had, though now they carried a gentler rhythm, as if the land itself had slowed its breathing to match the hearts of those who lived upon it. The valley no longer trembled with the fever of growth. Instead, it rested. The fields, once bursting with impossible greenness, had softened into gold and brown. The air was clear and still. It was a peace not born of victory, but of surrender. The man woke each morning before the first light, as he had since boyhood, and walked the boundaries of the fields. His boots sank softly into the moist earth. The hum, once thunderous beneath his feet, now lingered faintly in the distance, a low murmur, more memory than sound. He no longer feared it. He had learned to listen without asking. At the edge of the woods, the same moss-covered stone remained. Sometimes, when the air was heavy before rain, he thought he could see the carvings, shimmer lines, and curves that seemed to breathe when he wasn't looking directly at them. He would place his palm on the stone, feeling the faint pulse, and whisper the words the wife had taught him. We remember. The village had changed, though not in ways that could be measured. The people spoke more softly now. They quarreled less. The reeve no longer wore the chain of office. He had taken to mending roofs and thatching cottages. The blacksmith sang while he worked low songs in an old tongue that no one remembered teaching him. The children played without fear near the forest's edge, their laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves. The church remained, but its bell had cracked during the green veil. No one had repaired it. It hung there still, silent and dark, wrapped in ivy. Some said it should be melted down, others said it should be left, as it was a relic of forgetting. In the end, they did neither. It simply remained, like a wound that had turned to scar. The wife had begun keeping herbs again, drying them along the rafters of their home. She no longer hid it. The villagers came to her freely now, bringing ailments of body and heart. She would grind roots and whisper prayers, not to saints or to gods, but to the ground itself. It listens, she would say, pressing a poultice into a trembling hand. It always listens. The boy had grown tall, his hands strong and his eyes older than his years. He spent long hours at the river, watching how the water bent around stones, how the fish darted beneath shadows. Sometimes he would return home with his hair damp and his clothes streaked with mud, saying quietly, "I saw faces in the water." The wife would smile and nod, as though that were the most natural thing in the world. And yet, for all the quiet, something stirred beneath the peace, a restlessness, faint but insistent. The man felt it first in his dreams. He dreamed of the forest again, though now it stood silent, waiting. He dreamed of roots twisting under the soil, of light trapped deep underground, breathing slow as a sleeping beast. One morning, he woke before dawn to find the air heavy with mist. The fields shimmered with dew that glowed faintly green. When he touched it, it tingled against his skin. He called softly to the wife. She stepped outside, her shawl pulled tight around her shoulders. "It's happening again," she said quietly. "No," he answered. "It's remembering again." They walked together to the edge of the forest. The mist thickened there, swirling like breath. Beneath it, faint outlines moved, shapes that might have been trees or might have been something older. From within the fog came a whisper, not words, but the suggestion of language, like a song heard through water. The wife closed her eyes. "It wants us to come." The man shook his head. "Not yet. The land is still dreaming." They stood there until the mist began to lift. When it cleared, the forest looked unchanged, calm and patient. But the man knew that something beneath the surface had shifted again. The world was not finished remembering. In the weeks that followed, strange signs returned. The hens laid eggs with faint green marbling along their shells. The well water shimmered at night. The blacksmith's forge burned with a flame that flickered in colors no one had names for. Yet none of these things brought fear. The people had learned that wonder was not always warning. One evening, a storm rolled in from the western hills. The sky split open with lightning that arced green and gold. The villagers gathered in their homes, but no one prayed. They listened instead. The thunder came not as noise, but as rhythm, a pattern, almost speech. When it ended, the rain fell in silence, and every drop that touched the ground was absorbed instantly, as if the earth had been waiting to drink. After the storm, the wife found the man standing barefoot in the field. The soil glowed faintly around his feet. "It's alive again," she said. "It never died," he answered. "It was only waiting for us to stop shouting." Autumn came, and with it a long stillness. The harvest was modest this year, but no one complained. The people had learned not to measure their fortune by abundance alone. They gathered in the square at night, lighting fires not for warmth but for remembrance. They told stories not of kings or saints, but of the valley, of the time the earth had spoken, and the people had listened. The boy, now nearly grown, stood one evening before the gathering and said, "If the land remembers us, do we remember it enough?" The villagers fell silent. The reeve, now gray and bent, answered, "We do what we can. But memory is like soil, it must be tended." The man watched his son, pride and unease mingling in his heart. He knew that the boy would not stay in the valley forever. The young always followed the pull of the unknown, and perhaps the earth had new places yet to awaken. That night, he dreamed again not of trees or roots, but of light. It spread across the land in quiet waves, touching hills, rivers, and distant cities. He saw people looking up, listening, as though they too were beginning to remember. The hum rose and fell, endless and patient, connecting every living thing in a single breath. He woke before dawn, the dream still pulsing in his chest. The wife stirred beside him. "Another dream," she murmured. He nodded. "It's moving beyond the valley now." She smiled, eyes still closed. "Then the world is ready." Outside, the first birds began to sing, not the sharp call of hunger or fear, but the slow, steady notes of a new beginning. The man listened, and beneath the song, he thought he could still hear it, the low hum, steady as the tide, carrying the memory of all that had been, and all that was still to come. He whispered into the dawn, "We are listening," and the earth, somewhere deep below, seemed to whisper back, The boy left in the spring. He rose before sunrise, when the mist still lay low over the fields, and the world held its breath between night and day. His mother packed bread and dried herbs in a small cloth, tying it neatly, her hands steady though her eyes were not. His father stood at the gate, watching the fog curl around his son's boots. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, the wife said, "The land will guide you. Listen to it." The boy nodded. "I will." He turned toward the forest path, the same path his parents had once walked during the green veil, and was gone before the sun cleared the eastern hills. The man and his wife watched the place where the trees had swallowed him until the mist burned away. The valley was quiet again, but it was not the old silence of fear. It was the quiet of waiting. The days moved slowly. The wife tended the herbs, the man repaired fences and mended the roof. At night, they sat by the hearth, speaking softly of the boy, wondering where the path had led him. Sometimes, when the wind blew from the west, they thought they heard a faint echo of some old words, remembered in a young voice. In the boy's absence, the land continued its slow transformation. The crops grew in strange, deliberate patterns, bending toward invisible centers. The river changed its course, carving new channels through the meadow. No one fought it anymore. The villagers learned to follow the land's will instead of forcing it. They had become caretakers, not masters. One morning, a group of travelers arrived, a sight rare in the valley. They were not merchants or pilgrims in the old sense, but wanderers carrying tokens of green stone and bits of carved wood. They spoke little, but their eyes were bright with recognition. "We heard of this place," one said, "the valley that remembers, the place where the ground hums." The wife welcomed them, offering food and rest. That evening, they gathered in the square. One of the travelers took out a small carved disc and held it to the firelight. The patterns upon it were like those on the old stone in the forest, curving lines that seemed to move when stared at too long. "Others have felt it," he said softly. "Not just here. In the northern hills, the lakes, even the cities. The hum spreads beneath the world like roots. It wakes what was forgotten." The villagers listened, their faces glowing orange in the firelight. "It's begun again," murmured the reeve, who was now nearly blind. The remembering moves outward. The wife closed her eyes, her lips moving silently. The man looked up at the stars, wondering if even they were listening. Weeks passed. The travelers stayed for a time, helping with the fields, learning the rhythm of the valley. They told stories of strange lights in distant lands, of rivers that sang at dusk, of dreams shared between sleepers hundreds of miles apart. When they left, they took with them small handfuls of the valley's soil, wrapped in cloth, to seed memory elsewhere, they said. The man watched them go, and felt both pride and unease. Memory was a gift but also a weight. As summer deepened, he began to dream again. The dreams were no longer of the forest alone, but of the wider world, the mountains, the sea, the deep heart of cities. He saw roots spreading beneath stone roads and towers, glowing faintly with the same light that once filled the valley. He saw people kneel, confused but not afraid, as the earth spoke beneath them. In one dream, he saw his son walking along a shore at twilight. The water glowed faintly green where his feet touched it. He bent to pick up a shell, and when he lifted it to his ear, he smiled as though hearing the hum in the sea's own voice. When the man awoke, the wife was watching him. "You saw him again," she said. He nodded. "He's carrying it with him." She smiled. "Then the world will remember through him." By autumn, letters began to arrive, not written on parchment, but carved onto thin slices of wood, marks like those on the old stone, left by travelers who had passed through. They were messages of witness, of renewal. The river near Dunmere glows with light at full moon. The orchard in Red Hollow bears fruit out of season. In the southern hills, a child sang in her sleep, and the earth answered. The wife kept the wooden slips in a woven basket by the hearth. She never counted them. They were not to be measured, only cherished. The villagers began calling themselves keepers. It was not a title, but a way of being. They tended the land, the memory, the balance. The reeve died that winter, his face peaceful, his hands folded over a sprig of green moss. When they buried him, the ground did not freeze, the earth opened easily like a sigh. The following spring, something extraordinary happened. At dawn, a tremor rolled through the valley, not violent, but vast, like the turning of a great body beneath the soil. The people ran from their homes, hearts racing. The sky darkened briefly, not with clouds but with shadow and immense, shifting shape, as if the earth itself were exhaling. Then came the light. It rose from the ground in thin streams, curling upward like smoke, gathering in the air. The streams converged above the square, forming a slow, spinning shape, a wheel of green and gold. No one moved. The hum returned, deep and resonant, filling every chest, every heartbeat. The light pulsed once, twice, and then scattered into a rain of sparks that drifted down upon the valley. Where the sparks touched, flowers bloomed, instantly pale blossoms that glowed faintly before fading into ordinary petals. The air smelled of rain and stone and time. The wife fell to her knees, tears on her cheeks. "It's the land's promise," she whispered. "It will not be forgotten again." The man stood beside her, watching the light fade into dawn. For the first time, he felt no fear of endings, only continuation. That night, he sat by the hearth, the basket of carved messages beside him. He turned one over in his hands, a new piece, freshly delivered that morning. The marks upon it were simple but clear. The boy walks east. The earth hums beneath his feet. He closed his eyes, feeling the hum rise once more, faint but steady, running through the world like blood through a living body. The remembering was no longer theirs alone. It had become the world's. Winter came quietly that year, as though the cold itself had learned respect. Snow fell in thin, deliberate flakes, each one slow and heavy, as if reluctant to touch the ground. The fields lay under their white veils. The river murmured beneath ice, and the forest held its breath. Even the hum, that low eternal rhythm beneath the soil, had softened to a whisper, as though the land, too, wished to rest. The man had grown older. His hair, once black, was now streaked with silver. His hands bore the roughness of decades, but his eyes still carried the green reflection of the forest's glow. He walked more slowly, but each step was deliberate, as though the ground itself waited for his foot to fall before remembering how to breathe. The wife had taken to spending long hours by the hearth, whispering softly to the herbs drying along the rafters. The children, grown now with families of their own, visited often, bringing laughter and noise into the old cottage. Yet even in their joy there was reverence, as though every smile were a kind of prayer. One night, as the fire burned low, the wife said, "It's time for the last remembering." The man looked up from his work, startled. "What do you mean?" "The land is almost done speaking," she said. "It has said what it needed to say. Soon, it will fall silent again until someone else listens." He frowned. "Then all of this, the green veil, the hum, the light, will fade." "Not fade," she said, her voice tender. "Settle, like seed after harvest." That night, he could not sleep. The wind hissed softly through the thatch, and outside, the moon laid pale light across the snow. He rose quietly and walked into the night, his breath turning to mist. The valley stretched before him, silent, luminous. No light shone in the cottages, no flame burned in the church, yet the snow seemed to glow from within. He walked down the slope toward the square. Each step crunched softly, as though the world had been wrapped in wool. At the center of the square, where once the green light had flared, stood the old cracked bell. It was nearly buried now, its iron body wrapped in ivy that did not die in the frost. The vines shimmered faintly, each leaf holding a thin pulse of color, as if remembering the sun. The man reached out and touched the bell. It was cold, but not dead. There was warmth somewhere deep inside the metal, as if a single ember still slept within. He whispered, "We are still here." A faint sound answered, not a hum this time, but something higher, more fragile. A note, then another. The bell began to sing, not loudly, not in words, just a tone rising and falling, pure as winter air. It was not struck by any hand, it simply vibrated, as though the earth beneath it had chosen to speak one final time. The sound spread through the valley, touching the cottages, the frozen fields, the sleeping forest. Windows glowed softly, not from fire but from memory. The villagers woke and stepped outside. Faces turned toward the sound. The wife appeared beside him, wrapped in her shawl, her breath steaming in the cold. She took his hand. "Do you hear it?" "Yes," he whispered. The last song. The children and their children gathered behind them. The Reeves' grave glimmered faintly under its blanket of snow, and from the forest's edge came the answering glow of trees awakening, roots stirring, branches quivering, the hum rising once more in harmony with the bell. The wife closed her eyes. "It remembers everything now." The light grew brighter. The air shimmered, thick with warmth though the snow did not melt. The man felt the vibration through his bones, through the soles of his feet, through the hollow spaces of his heart. He thought he could hear voices woven into the tone, the laughter of children, the rustle of leaves, the cry of the first plow breaking the earth, the sigh of the wind in ancient forests, all the lives, all the seasons, all the moments the valley had ever known singing together. Then, as gently as it had begun, the sound faded, the light dimmed, the hum sank back beneath the soil, soft and sure. The snow fell again, steady and calm. The wife leaned her head against his shoulder. "It's done." He nodded. "It's resting." When spring came, it came quietly. The snow melted in thin rivulets, soaking into the ground that drank it like water after thirst. The first shoots of green broke through the soil, small and unhurried. The people tilled the land again, but their tools were light, their hands gentle. The earth yielded easily. On the day the first wheat sprouted, a messenger arrived from the north, a woman in a gray cloak, carrying a carved disc of wood. She bowed to the man and his wife and said, "I met a traveler in the highlands. He spoke of you," he said. "Tell them the hum still walks beside me." The wife smiled. "Our son." The messenger nodded. "He said to tell you, the land beyond the mountains is waking too." The remembering spreads. The wife took the disc and placed it on the hearth among the old carvings. "Then the world is safe," she said softly. "It will not forget again." Years passed. The man and wife grew older still, their hair white, their steps slower. The hum remained beneath their feet, faint but eternal. On the longest night of winter, they sat together by the dying fire, fingers entwined. The wife said, "When we are gone, they will still listen." He smiled faintly. "And the earth will still sing?" She nodded. "That's enough." When morning came, the fire had gone cold. The man sat with his head bowed, his hands still clasped around hers. Outside, the valley lay silent under frost, but a faint sound, soft as breath, trembled in the air. The hum had returned. Not loud, not urgent, just a pulse, deep and steady, carrying through root and stone and air. It was not mourning, it was remembrance. By the time the villagers found them, the snow had melted in a perfect circle around their chairs. The ground beneath was warm, alive, fragrant with the scent of new growth. They buried the couple beside the old stone in the forest, where the carvings still shimmered faintly. The boy, now a man, returned from his wandering, stood before their graves. He placed his hand on the soil and whispered, "You've taught the earth to remember." Then he rose, turned toward the horizon, and listened. The wind carried a faint hum, rolling across the hills, weaving through valleys, into mountains, into oceans. The world was awake now, and somewhere beneath every step, in every patch of soil and stone, in the smallest seed and the oldest root, the song of the valley went on low, endless, alive. It was the sound of all things remembering themselves.